All right, I would like to call the planning commission meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Carl Granzo present.
Mark Crouch present.
Randy Thomas present.
Lynell Comstock present.
Okay, has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes.
Any comments or discussion? I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. All right, workshop. Code draft of the proposed restrictions for street ingress, egress. Okay, let's go back to the draft that we were working on. Any comments after thinking about the ingress, egress, and general format?
We're gonna.
Yeah, we're just kind of, that's all I did.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so. Any changes to the text in it that anybody has? Okay, so let's just go to the yellow highlighted areas. And the first one would be number 5. Approach separation from street intersections. Except as provided by section H, the following minimum distances shall be maintained between the approaches and the street intersections where the distance is measured from the edge of the approach of the surface to the edge of the roadway at its ultimate designated width. On an arterial, how do you say that?
Arterial.
Arterial street, 100 feet, except as required by ODOT pursuant to Oregon administrative rule for state highways. And then they have a definition of arterial street as one that basically just flows into everybody else. And the 100 feet is the minimum you've seen out there.
Well, the
I'm
100
not even identifying it.
the 100 feet was the default suggestion that was in the model code.
Okay.
And I want to put that in context. So they're talking about the distance between the minimum distance between a driveway and an intersection. So this would be applied when someone's putting in a new driveway or there's new development. And it would be a lot that's facing an arterial street. A lot of the arterial areas that we have here in Lakeside, the minimum lot width is 60 feet. And some of the established lots are down to 50 feet. So you can't really use that kind of space there with the existing lots. But then keep in mind, this is only going to apply to future development, but you still have to think about that.
Right, and these 50 and 60 feet places are like on 8th and Lake, or
Well, your two arterials in
that's
Lakeside
the ones I would
are North 8th Street and North Lake Road. Those are the only arterials in town.
and those aren't that.
What, the two streets aren't that close? you
Well,
mean?
the lots to where it would run into 50 and 60 feet.
There, what I'm saying is, if you're a property owner on those streets, you're effectively telling this person either they can't have a driveway on that street or their driveway has to be on their neighbor's lot or all the way at the edge of the lot. Yeah,
And we still do have.
yeah.
Yeesh.
Most of them on those streets are like that.
So in the future plans and new developments, it won't be difficult to make sure they are instructed not to fall underneath of these particular issues right here.
Right. So. And in the future, obviously, we want to go to a standard like that. But my concern is, do all these lots have driveways? The smaller lots, where you would essentially not allow them to actually have a driveway.
Well, they're supposed to, because you require them all to have at least one parking space off street. So if there's no driveway, they can't get to that.
Okay. Because I don't wanna, hurt somebody. I don't wanna, don't wanna have somebody get into a situation where you can't actually.
You want that 100 feet down to 50.
Well, doing that would cause problems with future development. But I don't wanna hurt somebody where there's a lot already that's not gonna work and make it so they can't have a driveway. So if this only applies to future development and we're okay with the fact that.
Define what
it has a
future
driveway.
development is. I don't know what you mean by future development.
Commissioner Granza, the idea is that anything you put into the land use code only applies going forward. You can't apply it retroactively. So anyone who's got a driveway now has got a driveway.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's lots out there that are smaller than 100 feet that are empty right now.
Yes.
Okay, so if you put this 100 feet in the code, they can't have a driveway.
Within 100 feet of an intersection. Yeah,
And there are lots out there like that.
there are some, yes.
Um, And I don't want to get all tricky with the code either. But when you're talking about an intersection, if you're cutting it down to 50 feet, that's like kind of crazy.
It's the distance from an intersection. Yeah.
I don't know, any other comments on it?
I have one, I mean, basic on the idea that we have two main intersections or arterial streets. Is that what we have, you're saying?
Yeah, North
So-
8th and North
So
Lake.
how many houses are we talking about in that area? Again, it's, if we're dealing with a specific area that can be understood versus all the hundreds of other homes that are not following that, are we at least very specific just for those intersections? Does that make sense?
No,
Okay, so there, at the intersection, I mean, if we have three arterial intersections,
the roads are arterial, intersections aren't.
okay, good.
And the only two roads we have to worry about is North 8 and North Lake.
Mhm.
And evidently though, there are some lots that will fall into the can't driveway.
I missed some of your question over the chatter out here.
Excuse me? Let's just stay with the topic.
I was asking about the city property on North Lake. Wouldn't that exclude them from having a driveway for future, since there is no driveway there?
No, 100 feet from the intersection on an arterial road.
That would blow the city's idea to do anything with that property.
Well, that's what we've been discussing. So, you might want to listen to where we're at. We are talking about exactly this situation. So, I think if you do want to talk, it would probably be appropriate to not to type in. I do want to hear your comments, don't get me wrong, but, you know, we just want to keep it flowing here. Okay, so back to the point is, there are lots out there now that we would deny on the street, driveway, because they haven't been developed.
At 100 feet.
At
100 feet.
Yeah, and you know, if it was a corner lot, you might tell them they have to go to the other street. But otherwise, you're left with forcing someone to apply for a variance.
Which in that case would be totally valid, in my mind. Would meet all 5 criteria then,
There's 7, but
or 7,
yes, it would.
and it would meet all those criteria.
Mhm.
Because in the future, you can't have a lot that small anyways, right?
Well, hopefully in the future,
It will be fine.
whoever is reviewing subdivisions and partitions would also be reviewing them with your standards for ingress and egress in mind.
Correct.
Yeah.
So. Okay, well, I'm okay with 100 feet in that case, knowing that they could actually apply for a variance, and this would meet the variance criterion.
But this,
Go ahead.
so again, I mean, I'm dull-minded in many ways, but my thoughts are so I can feel comfortable with it. And I know other people are thinking the same thing, but I'm gonna voice it. It's the amount of people that are in these areas. Okay, other words, what they have now, we can't do nothing. This is for future developments.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just curious to see what in that area is blank, like you were all saying, like that one blank spot, or what do they require?
And that's where the conflict comes in, is if you have an undeveloped lot out there that can't do this 100 feet, we don't want to say, oh, no, we can't have a driveway, right? Makes no sense. So, but if they can go through the variance process and they would meet the criterion, I'm comfortable with going to the 100 feet.
What happens if they don't meet the criteria for variances, because variances are given very rarely by the book, and I'll go back to using the city property. That wouldn't consider be giving them a variance because they have on-street parking. So
Correct.
your variance,
But we just,
you couldn't.
when Rob was
choose.
talking about it, he said that it would actually meet all the criteria.
Have off-street parking, so it wouldn't be a hardship.
Mr. Smith, if you read the code for parking, you'll see that every lot is supposed to have at least one off-street parking space. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I understand your concern. That's my same concern, but if we're sure that it would still get through the variance. Then,
And to answer your other question, which was, would someone get a variance without meeting all of the criteria? The answer to that is no one can lawfully receive a variance without meeting all of the criteria. Doesn't matter whose property is or what their
That's the way
plan
it
is.
goes. So, yeah.
So, but also with variances, it says that the planning commission may grant a variance to a regulation prescribed by this code with respect to the following. So we have fences, hedges, or walls. Site area, width, frontage, depth, or coverage. I don't know if it falls with any of that. Front, side, or rear yards. Height of structures or distance between structures. So does the ingress or egress as a driveway included in any of those?
It isn't. But it's also not included in the limitations on variances either. So it's definitely in a gray area.
would it be bad code writing if we put in something like impossible?
I'm sure it would be. I don't know if I asked that question.
Or if applicable.
Yeah.
And to the best of my recollection, the only actual prohibition to the commission's authority to grant variance is a variance to use regulations.
But we could determine that all those criteria.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes,
So many examples of some people who own 2 lots and have thoughts of selling some or developing an ADU on their other 50-foot section. And there's intersection on the side streets all the way down North Lake. On both ends, you're at an intersection at Railroad and at North Lake. So if there's a 50-foot lot and it's on, let's say, 12th Street and North Lake, they wouldn't be able to build a driveway. And there are some empty lots and mobile homes being taken out, new development. Even on the 100-foot lot, their driveway would have to be all the way at the one end of their lot. But why not make it 50 feet, just knowing that we have lots of examples and save you all time of hearing a bunch of variances?
well, the problem with that is we have to look towards the future.
Where,
And it's not an ideal situation to have only 50. It's really not ideal, like they're shooting at 100. So I don't know if it was 75 or
Some
something.
standard. But that is already a thing, like. they
Well,
wouldn't be able to build a
and
driveway.
Also remember this too, is that the ones that are already developed already have a driveway.
But maybe they haven't put their ADU on their 50-foot lot. Maybe
Well-
they haven't put, and they wouldn't be able to be a driveway to that. I mean, there's a lot of things that. You already know that your new lots being built are gonna be more than 50 feet, so that eliminates that problem, but. You have a whole bunch of lots. In the city that are 50
Also,
feet.
remember, we're talking about artillery streets.
I understand that, whole bunch of lots at the intersections of both of those streets. There's an intersection on both sides, all the way down North Lake, intersections all the way up 8th. It's not
Well-
just that intersection.
Give me a number then, because
I guess I would know the number.
Okay. Carl needs cause of two things.
are we talking about the driveway would be on North Lake or on A Street?
That's it.
Not on the side street.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you have a lot that is on the corner of North Lake and 12th Street, you would have to put the driveway on 12th Street, not on North Lake.
Right.
And that's problem solved.
But a 50-foot lot, you couldn't even put it, because your driveway couldn't be 50 feet away
It doesn't have to
from
be.
the intersection of.
It only if the driveway is on North Lake, does it have to be 50
Okay.
feet away from the 12th Street. Is that right?
This is a distance between the driveway and the intersection.
Yeah,
And this would only apply to
Right.
driveways that are on North 8th Street or North Lake Road.
right.
And at an intersection.
On the intersection.
On the, yeah,
Alright.
lots that are at the intersection.
So if it's on an intersection, there's one street that's not an arterial.
In general, we have some intersections in town that are intersections between an arterial and a collector.
Oh, I get you.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with 100 feet, knowing that there's variances. I don't know what you guys.
Is this for variance based on the existing places or?
No.
So how often are we gonna get a
Existing
variance?
streets. And that's kind of what we're doing here is we're kind of getting really. We're talking about a very unique situation at this point. You know, for the 50-foot lot that. You know, and they can always request a variance if that's the case. But I think we should handle the uniqueness and not go to the lowest denominator here.
So my determination of that is, what is the definition of an intersection? This, there's 4 corners,
Mhm.
No,
And so-
need it before.
Well, no, it could be 3.
just
It could be a
one
T.
here, and so a T
Yeah,
intersection.
yeah,
Intersection.
but you're talking about the intersection, putting a driveway on the arterial portion of it, not on the side street.
Right.
The side street doesn't have that limitation. The arterial has a limitation.
So essentially. You've got it. On, if you're doing an intersection, you've got a side street. In pretty much all cases.
The only place you don't have that is on North Lake and 8th.
Right,
Those are 2 arterial.
right. That's where.
Yeah. Other than that, you have side streets.
And you have variances. So what do you guys say?
I think 100 feet is a lot. 100 feet is far for, obviously for our small lots, as we know.
I mean, looking at,
It may bring a lot of variances, but, I mean, not necessarily, but the future development of existing properties.
What figure would you feel would be appropriate?
I mean, knowing that there's 60 feet wide. And still 50 feet though is small, it's a
Yeah.
limited amount too.
And an intersection is where. You get the most accident because of being able to see, so. Yeah, it is.
but again, the ones that are right now don't even apply to this because of the ones that are.
They already
already.
exist, right?
So new structure, new construction. That's where we should be leaning to. is the new
Well,
construction.
it's,
We'd be talking about vacant lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a lot potentially that is torn down and a new purpose put there. Would that also, or would that be grandfathered into the past?
If they
uses?
didn't have an existing,
Whatever driveway they had, they still get to keep that driveway. You know, so you
Yeah.
take down an old home, it had a driveway,
Is
it
that-
it doesn't go anywhere.
I just think that the 100 feet, 50 feet and all that is fine in there, but for the new construction, that's where we should be, of course, figure out our, back again, like you're saying, a lot that's been taken down and start over again, we can still use that grandfather, that highway in.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
It just,
so, I mean-
that is where the driveway is. You know, people don't have to apply to do a driveway or anything like that. You know, it is what it is. Well, whatever you guys say, but I'm kind of in the 100-foot range. You want to just take a vote? I mean, I can go either way, but you can see what the majority thinks. So I'm 100.
I basically feel it's a mute subject because you could be 1,000 feet and you can still put it on the side street.
Right, yeah. So are you 100 or 50?
and I'll be fine with 100, assuming that indeed the variances, it could be a variance, there could be a variance. I know it is a little, could be gray area.
the other side of this is if you have a standard like that in place, and in the future, somebody tries to do a subdivision or a partition on an arterial, then your staff would have to be looking at their plat map and ensuring that there was enough space there for them to have ingress and egress that meets whatever criteria are in effect at the time.
Right, and at that point, I would want to make sure, that we build on a solid foundation to go future and that they would need. Okay,
The new storage lot that's going in on Eighth and Railroad. You would variance them or knock them out for a driveway because is it Railroad? They wouldn't be able to put a driveway there because that's for one car parking for those RVs there.
well, we won't get into specifics, but there are a lot of issues with that spot.
There is in fact no known plan other than a sign on the fence to put anything on that lot. No one's filed paperwork for anything. So,
And like you said, Dave,
Or a business, any business there.
and exactly like you said, Dave, variance
David.
I'm sorry, David, like you said, David, variance or something that's not candy, it's not given out easily. They shouldn't happen too often. Unless there's some real physical issues with that, which in this case. So I'm good with 100 feet. What do you think, Randy?
Well, based on, if this is again for future development, then I'm for the 100 feet as well.
So let's leave it at 100 feet. Okay, the next one is a collector street. Which it's a primary funnel of traffic to one local highway or another, or between arterials or local highways. So a good example of that would be
Airport Way,
Airport Way.
it's a good example
Yeah.
of a collector.
That's a collector. 50 feet. I don't think we have any lots any smaller than 50, right? Oh God, I know I shouldn't have asked that question.
You know what? I can find you some tiny postage stamps if you make me.
Well, I think 50 feet is fine.
Again, those lots or are those existing buildings?
Just for amusement, there are some bizarre lots in Lakeside that have less than 100 square feet. No one's really quite sure how they came to exist, but they do.
So I think 50 feet is fine. What do you guys think?
I think Airport Way is just as busy as these other streets.
Easier.
Yeah, and
that's
you think
becoming-
of that intersection right there from 8th and Airport Way and, the little pull into the little coffee shop. And that's not very far in, and that always causes a little cluster.
Yep.
Right there.
And of course, now with the ATV traffic,
So I would think that it'd almost be just 100 feet as well.
I'm fine with 100 feet.
I mean, I just think of that business.
Yeah.
I think it's busy.
So you think it's busy enough to warrant something like that? The 100 feet from an intersection. And you did bring up where the coffee spot is. That would, of course, you have the railroad track issue too. How about Hennick's?
But Hennick's is on 8th anyway.
Yeah, well, that 8th and Airport.
Right.
So that was. I'm good with 100.
I mean,
Yeah,
100 feet still, it's always a cluster when people are trying to turn in
yeah,
and
yeah.
cross traffic.
That Lakeside's never had a traffic engineer.
And
Things would be a
that's
lot
just
better.
my first thought. I don't know, Carl.
of course, this is for future, not for existing. So how many lots are on there that's going to require the 100 feet?
So this is again with an intersection.
with an intersection, yeah.
So we have just like
Headaches, the church,
8. No, this is on airport.
yeah, on airport. Because isn't Headaches on airport?
No, this is on basically.
Okay.
8th and
But they
airport.
are.
But they don't have a driveway.
You're driving,
The driveway is on the.
And then the one spin rail.
Yeah, well, and Sarah Lane is all those lots are out on the local street. Yeah. And it's all on Sarah where it should be.
So really you're just worried about right off of 8.
Yeah.
there's those couple right across from the airport that don't have any. That are lived in by trailers. Or RVs. No structure on them.
But they're not near an intersection.
What?
Are they near an intersection?
No, they're not an intersection.
Yeah, I'm good with 100. I don't have a problem with that. What do you think, David?
No,
No,
If you were to make that 100 feet and in the future, we really have a push to put businesses on a lot of these corner lots. How likely is then your group to be friendly to them gaining access? You know what I mean? It's like, I see, like, I just foresee this opportunity or where an investor, somebody wants to come to our town and really, bring something positive here. And they're turned off because they can't get access to the property.
if an investor comes and he sees that, they'll be fine with 100.
so, where is that? Is that zoned commercial? Or is that just zoned residential?
This has nothing to do with zones.
Yeah.
Oh, but where the housing projects were as far as access and all.
That, no, this just means a street. Yeah. Either way, I'm fine with it. Since we have 100 out there, I'm okay with 100. Okay. Let's do 100. Local street, 20 feet. I guess that's okay. I don't even really see the need for, what about if you have two driveways next to each other?
This again is the spacing between the driveway and an intersection.
Oh, okay.
Can we go back one step?
Sure.
The way I read B with the collector street, it doesn't have to be on a corner.
No, it's just with any other intersection.
Just with any other intersection.
No intersection.
It's a number 5, so it says approach separation from street intersections, then A, B, and C are regarding.
That way,
Yeah.
Okay.
So 20 feet,
This is just good.
okay. So we're good with 20 feet? This is the local street too, so.
Yeah.
All right, approach spacing. Except for provided by MC 155.260, number 8, or as required to maintain street operation safety, the following minimum distance shall be maintained between approaches where the distance is measured from the edge of one approach to the edge of another approach.
So what you're talking about is the space between two driveways or the space between a driveway and a private access road onto a street.
Okay, so it's just the space between
The space between approaches.
approaches, okay. And the minimum amount recommended for an arterial street is 150 feet. Based on the speed limit or posted speeds as applicable, except where otherwise required by ODOT. for a state highway pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rules. ORA 734051. Based on speed limit or posted speed. What do they mean by that?
What they're saying is for safety reasons, the higher the speed on the street, the further apart the access points should be.
So they're talking about a minimum at this point.
Yeah.
With the number that we fill in.
And I don't,
Actually, in this case, it would be a maximum.
Well, it says 150 to 360.
so
Correct.
again, those numbers came from the model code. I have no idea what they're based on. I have no idea what range of speed limits they were looking at.
So if it's in our area, what is our average? Miles per gallon, you know, I mean, miles per hour, you know, I mean, is it 25 hours, 25 miles per hour or 40 miles per hour based on the areas. And, you know, legally, except the guys that
North
go,
Lake Street is about 75.
I know. No, legally,
Well, we do have speed limits. And that's what it's based on.
so based on our speed limits, then we could determine, or is that just a general number we're throwing out at 150 to 360? If our zone,
150 feet between driveways.
is that driveways? Or is it the speed for
Between driveways.
As far.
And
I mean, it could be.
I'm just looking at how fast.
well, if you have two driveways here, right? And the car is going this way, one car pulls out. You can't see it. The other car over here. Well, that's why they probably spacing, right, Dave? You used to work in highway,
I
right?
did road construction for 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. Is that why they do that?
It depends on the city, the volume of traffic. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the number of 150 feet?
That's for future.
Hmm.
I think that, I think you're a little high on that 150 number, especially if your speed limit's 2025. Doesn't matter what people do if they don't do the speed limit, it's what you set at the speed limit. But then
Right.
again, how much traffic does railroad get, or Tierra or King? And it's not existing because it's
Right. So you have to think 5 years in the future.
I wouldn't think, I think. If someone buys 100-foot lot, well, you just price. Where's your driveway at 150 feet? There's an issue. I mean, even if you bought two lots, you'd still only have 200 feet, you're still at 360. You're not gonna get a driveway. I think your number's a little vague there and a little off.
So what would you recommend?
Here you go, Dave, you're getting your recommendation.
Well, you gotta go with people who, you know, have a little bit of.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
I mean, would 100 work?
You have to put it on the edge of your property,
And we're talking safety here.
for. Let's say, for a new development, let's say if it was, let's just use the end of North Lake, whatever. And it's not a busy street, you could have, think of townhomes, when they put two driveways next to each other, you have 10 feet. Sometimes 15 feet in between two driveways, so.
Yeah, and that's a local street. We're
And that's
talking
what
about.
you're asking for.
We're talking
local
about
streets.
our total,
And it's arterial,
our busy streets.
so.
Oh, the busy streets, I put them, I would do at least 50, maybe 70, 75. If that's on 100-foot lot, because this way they can put it to one edge. And you can control your flow of traffic that way.
How about 100?
Then you're easement onto someone else's property.
Yeah, but
They can't have it.
you want to create a safe environment, you know. And that's the thing is, my concern is safe. Of it all, so that's where my concern is, you know. Yes,
What's the minimum lot size going forward, 100 feet?
60.
So if there's a 60-foot lot and a 60-foot lot, but they can't have a driveway within 100 feet of each other, both neighbors can't have a driveway.
Unless the developer, assuming this is a development, decides to make adjacent lots have a shared ingress and egress.
right.
No,
And if you're a developer, you would probably run a street down the middle. Or some local street. Or an alleyway, which really seems like it is.
I just find it, not to contradict your other code would be easier for all.
Well, we're not really contradicting it, though, are we?
But like if you went with 150, but lots can be 60.
An easy way to go off whatever the ORS is.
The ORS is for spacing on state highways.
But if we go off of what the easiest way to go, I think would be to go off the model code, but we don't want to stifle development, so I'm thinking going low on the model code. Because they've obviously had traffic engineers look at this and stuff.
And you've seen some of the freeway problems with those traffic engineers. What's the county code call for?
It
All right, Rob,
doesn't.
you can explain that.
The Coos County chart for this is very difficult to decipher. I wasn't able to figure it out. The part of the chart that I think is reporting this interval distance just has a dash in it for nothing at all.
Oh,
And for all of the data criteria that are on their chart, the smallest interval distance between anything is 500 feet.
If the county doesn't have any kind of clear guidance, is there any sort of example with similar sized cities or? around us?
Yeah, and remember, we're looking at the example right here. This is the model code, which is the model code for small cities. So this is the conglomeration of all the small cities saying, hey, here's the example.
If
You
I
go
could,
between this and that.
if I could be an overenthusiastic psychic and read Adam's mind, I think what he's suggesting is that you look at surrounding cities and see what kind of standards they have.
I mean, it's worth knowing what Reedsport and Winchester Bay and, our surrounding communities do. And if they don't have significant problems, then why would we do something significantly different than what they have?
Because last time you discussed this, you did ask me to go look at the county standards,
Right. Maybe we should
and
have a look.
that's all I did.
Well, you guys think we should look at some city standards before we get too deep into the numbers?
Makes sense.
Yep, okay, so we'll do that. We'll hold off on this to look at city standards. And, Rob, your usual 4 cities,
I might go more.
you might get more, okay. Can I average them and find the median you need?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I don't think we have anything else to cover on ingress egress. Oh, no, there is one point here. On a local street, 20 feet or city decision-making body. So we need to determine who that will be.
So is our small city standards we're gonna check, that's for A, is that going to help? Is that also going to include B?
Yeah.
Okay.
A, B, and C is, and these are all numbers, but the one thing that we can probably decide tonight is that on number C, where it says on a local street, 20 feet, or the city decision-making body may approve closer spacing. Well, no, I think we should have the or there. I think there should be an out because of, like everybody talks about.
Okay,
Yeah,
20 or, I agree with that.
whether you're sharing driveways, they're putting them right next to each other. or everything. So I think that would be. Planning commission. Planning commission or city engineer? Because we don't really have knowledge in that. Or even planning. I think that's a city engineer issue. You want to go smaller than 20 feet.
Makes sense.
Rebuttal to that. Any rebuttal to that? That's fine. Okay. Okay, city engineer. And then again, it's because of you know, understanding of that type of stuff. Because they might have a model where it could be 0 feet, providing that it's done correctly. All right, so on the workshop for code draft of proposed standards, egress and ingress, we're going to hold off on the numbers until we have some examples of cities. We did determine that any type of variance in the spacing that arises in number C of the last sample there would be done by city. Okay. We can finish that one off. Thank you for your input, David. All right, the next one is we're going to go back to the code draft proposed for standards for temporary land uses. First off, I would like to see how many food truck operators there are. I see the perk drums are there. Nice to see you again. We'll probably be relying on you for your expertise tonight, so I'm glad you're here.
I just asked them to unmute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can unmute now.
Yep, SS Bertram Land and Sea is here. We are attending the meeting.
All right, great. First off, what I would like to do is a recap of what we've covered in the last 2 meetings in regards to food trucks. Now, this is just a summary of it. I'm sure you all can go through the minutes that are provided in the packets. This whole thing started on March 22nd meeting. We discussed the basic framework for proceeding with code updates to the land use ordinance and so from now on, let's call it mobile food units instead of food trucks or MFUs, just so we have a consistent term that we use all the way across the board. In this meeting, no one from the public attended or commented. It was the observation, it was observed that the absence of a specific code for this type of a business, some aspects of public safety were not addressed, and the application of current codes for commercial development would be excessive for this business model. And also that it's not really allowed at this point. But, you know, like I said, that's why we're doing this. We're out there to get something in place to where we all can operate in a happy fashion. The commission reached a consensus on the purpose of creating mobile food units code would be to impose reasonable controls as safeguards to public health and safety. The planning commission reviewed the Oregon Small Cities Model Code along with codes from the cities of Coos Bay, Eugene, North Bend, and Staten. We also reviewed an article written by a planner. The article recommended that the planners consider as potential issues for coding the definition of covered businesses. In other words, what is a MFU or mobile food unit? Location, distance from competing established businesses, number of food trucks, size, hours of operation, placement of tables and chairs, depots, which would be mobile food unit, food courts or courts, restrooms, trash disposal, and signage. The first draft was created based on the shared information above. And we had actually created a standalone at that point in time, but we didn't need it, but we didn't review it in the last meeting. Now, in our last meeting, suggestions were made to have no standards except for health standards set by the county. Suggestions were made with no time limits before an MFU would be considered a permanent structure and subject to the building and zoning laws. Suggestions were made for less than 190-day period for a special events application. Suggestions were made for no sound amplification rules. Suggestions were made for not requiring a business license. There was discussion about gray water generators, concrete services, which I don't think we've really completely gone through 100%. But we went ahead and we've got something put together. The Planning Commission decided to continue with the Oregon Small Cities Model Code as our framework and our format, and not create a standalone code for MFUs. The Planning Commission considered all suggestions and discussions. The revised code draft in the packet is the current version of the code draft based on discussion and review from the last meeting. So tonight, and that was we kind of had everything figured out where everybody was coming from and everything like that. And we put together what we could reasonably assume would be a good draft and everything like that. But tonight I want to get into the specific details of the draft. In other words, I want to nail down all the concerns that might be there and that type of thing. All changes and suggestions at this point in time should be backed up with reason and facts, because our anticipation is that the changes tonight will actually be part of the recommended code. So be sure, let's stay away from generalities and really delve into the code, come up with where we want to go with it and go from there. And that is all I've got for that. So I guess the best way to start, does anybody have any questions or comments? This one? No? Let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, does everybody have a copy of the draft?
Yes.
Yeah, good. All right. Definitions to be added to MC 155.075. And this is the special, what would you call this, transient business section of our land use code? How would you classify it?
Section 0.075 is definitions for the land use code. It's just definitions.
The definitions part. Mobile food unit, any device propelled or powered by any means that is self-propelled or that can be pulled or pushed down the sidewalk, street, highway, waterway, on which food is prepared, processed, or converted, or which is used in selling or dispensing of food to the customer. Okay. Transient business. A business that operates in a city that has no fixed permanent location from which the business is conducted. The occupation of the location for blank, we're going to leave it blank right now, consecutive days constitutes a permanent location. Transient business does not include service work where the operator drives to a particular premise in order to perform specific service Examples include, but are not limited to, landscapers, yard maintenance workers, plumbers, etc. So the question right now is, what is a reasonable amount of days that a business would be considered just a transient business? And this is consecutive days. So this means simply you're there for a certain period of time, you leave for a day, you come back, clock starts all over again. Right? There's another period that we have there. So the model code has it at 30. I think 30 is a pretty much a reasonable time. That's a month. Remember, these are, supposedly mobile businesses. This is kind of like, the mirror test. Can you still move? Type of thing. So is there any other comments on that?
You should ask the Bertrams what they think.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Is 30 onerous to you, or is it fine, or?
Well, working in the RV industry for over 17 and a half years, anything less than 45 days in an RV park is transient business.
So you think a 45-day would be better than a 30-day?
I think so, because that does allow somebody to come in and actually obtain a permit from the city and operate for 45 days and then have to leave for a set standard amount of time before they can come back in and operate a business again.
That's what you want to do?
That's true.
Okay. Okay, and my husband brings up a good point, and then I have a alternate point. I would like to define an event versus permanent versus transient. So, I mean, for the city's sake, right? Because if we move so we're located, I know that we're located at Lakeside Junction and don't have plans of moving. So we're considered long-term in that situation. But if then we move, say, to Osprey Point for an event and we're there for 3 days, is that adequate time? I'm proposing to the board, just asking, is that adequate time to reset the timeline for relocation back to Lakeside Junction? So these are I'm more of a scenario type of a person. I just am wanting to define where that sits on the continuum of permits and timelines.
Right. So what we're talking about here is the code actually says the occupation of a location for 30 consecutive days constitutes a permanent location. So the minute you're away from there a day, then it's not consecutive anymore.
Okay.
So therefore it would be 1 day. And I'm correcting that, right? Yeah.
Okay, so if we move for an event, even if we're still within Lakeside, does that still constitute the same statute?
Yeah, we're talking about the property and whether you're consistently on a property. So you could be anywhere in the Lakeside. The more moving around, the better type thing.
I guess that's what I was hoping for
Yeah.
clear definition on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Adam?
I can also foresee a scenario where a food truck leaves for less than a day to go to Reedsport or North Bend or something for some event. And they're not, if you drive by in the morning and you drive by at night, you might not even notice it as moved.
Well, that's why we have one consecutive day.
So, I mean, if they were gone for that half a day, would that still in your mind? As long as they get up, go somewhere, come back a few hours later, it
Nope.
breaks the line
Nope,
overnight?
one consecutive day.
Does that mean overnight? Does that
That's
mean?
overnight, yeah.
Okay.
That way you really, broken the cycle.
No, I can understand. I just want
Okay.
to understand like her, what.
Right,
the criteria
you want to
is.
understand exactly what we're talking about.
Right, and that I think is what we're hoping for. We're not necessarily challenging, just looking for definition.
Right, exactly. Well, and, you know, we want to make it so it's beneficial to everybody.
Well, just clear for everybody.
Yeah, and clear is always good. So,
And we did that in the RV park where they had to move out of the park for a minimum of 1 day. And then they could come back to a completely different spot, but this is the same.
yeah, and the concept is pretty much the same here. You know, it's like you're in a mobile vehicle. So what does everybody think about 45 days? I personally don't see a problem with it.
I don't see a problem with 45 days.
If I could, just to be clear, that means that every 45 days, we would, as a food truck, relocate for at least one consecutive day, and then would be free to return
For an additional 45.
for an additional 45. Is that what we're looking at?
Perfect understanding.
Thank you. I don't have any problem with that.
Well, we're gonna rely on you for a lot of expertise, so I'm very happy to see that you're here tonight.
I
you.
appreciate that acknowledgement. Thank you.
So the next section was temporary uses. Temporary uses are characterized by their short-term nature and by the fact that permanent improvements are not made to the site. Temporary uses occur for not longer than a certain amount of days consecutively. Temporary uses include, but are not limited to, construction failures, leasing offices, temporary carnivals and fairs, and mobile food units, parking lots, retail warehouse sales, seasonal sales such as Christmas tree sales, vegetable stands, similar uses. The code contains permanent procedures for 3 types of temporary uses: special events, temporary sales offices, temporary buildings, trailers, kiosks, and other structures as follows. Okay, so if we went 45 days above, wouldn't it be 45 days in this section? Or am I not reading that right?
Actually, I have a bigger problem with the sentence you're asking about.
Okay.
So what you just read is, consider it the preface or statement of purpose for the temporary uses section.
Okay,
And then it lays out 3 categories of temporary uses. And for each of the 3 categories, well, except for the temporary sales office in a subdivision, but for your special events, within the special events section, it sets a maximum duration for a special event. And then in your temporary structure section, it sets a maximum duration. So you don't even need one here, because if you put a maximum duration in this paragraph, then it's going to conflict with the other sections.
yeah,
I agree. So if 45 days is the blanket statement, which is what I assume that the chairman is proposing, 45 days overall umbrella covers all of that.
and we actually probably don't even need that sentence. Is what you're
That's
getting at.
that's what I'm
what he's
suggesting.
saying.
So why don't we just take that sentence out?
I think we're all in agreement that the 45-day umbrella covers all of that.
All right, that was easy. Makes a little bit more sense. Okay, special events. City administrator shall approve with condition or deny a temporary use application for a special event based on the following criteria. Siting requirements. The use is permitted in the underlying zone and does not violate any conditions of approval for the property, i.e. prior development, permit approval. So the strict reading of the current zoning code would result in a finding that special events are allowed only in the public facility zone. The commission may want to consider either specifically which zones can have a special event in this code section, or adding it to the zones as a permanent use subject to this section. It's very hard for me to read it. But so essentially what it's saying right now is we're only covering public facilities. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding this.
So what I'm trying to tell you with that comment is under the current code, special events are technically only allowed in the PF zone.
Which is probably, in my mind, not a good thing.
That's,
Yeah.
yes, that's probably too restrictive.
Yeah.
So
That's
you,
what I agree. Yep.
That takes away from us if there's a catered event, a wedding, etc., to be able to come in and do a,
No, it's not really even talking about that. What it's saying is, so like everybody could be out at Osprey Point, but not in McKay's parking lot. And I think that we want to eliminate the definition of the public facility.
Well, a little bit different, and I'll continue in just a moment. I'm
No
going
worries.
to finish my thought here.
Would you-
is, so for example, like we used to have the Crawdad Festival on Park. That would have been in the commercial zone. Right?
so one side of the street is zoned PF and the other side of the street is currently zoned open space.
Right.
And then you have events in the park, which is open space.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying is
Yeah.
you commissioners should consider which zones are and which zones are not appropriate for special events.
Exactly. Okay. Adam?
My thoughts are, because above it mentions that the special events would not be allowed if they violated that any zone's rules. That special events would be allowed in almost every zone as long as they don't violate that zone's rules. So if I have a lot within a residential area and it's 5 acres and I have room to have an event without violating that zone, then it should be considered.
Yeah, but you're violating the zone because it's not.
You're actually misreading the language, Adam. The part that addresses what you're talking about is the use is permitted in the underlying zone. So if a special event is not allowed in a particular zone, you can't have it at the proposed
Right,
site.
and the only
Yeah.
zone is permitted is the public.
But we're talking about potentially changing that.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. We could
Yeah.
potentially change that to say it could go in any zone unless it specifically violates noise, sight.
as
you know.
as a person who works with code, I'm advising the commission that if they adopted a draft like this and added it to the current land use code without either changing this or changing the zone language in the land use code, you would only be allowed to have special events in the public facilities zone.
So like, I understand that. 100%.
Okay.
My wish list would be commercial, marine commercial, recreational, open space and private property. Because of
Private
my,
property is not a zone.
oh, right,
So public is probably what
Right,
you're talking about,
right.
thinking about, yeah. So all the commercials, public and
streets.
recreation.
I would include Park Avenue.
Well, evidently, we've included Park Avenue by it being on the border of.
Yeah, streets are not actually zoned.
All right,
The lots adjacent to them are.
okay,
So you
so
can
if we
take
did
it
open space, recreational and PF, it would cover everything around that.
So how does everybody feel about expanding the at this point? Everybody should.
I think it needs to be.
So I'm thinking we might want to think about this one a little bit more. I know we kind of wanted to finish up everything, but I really think we should think about what zones we wanted in first. You know, take a good long thing. And, you know, I don't think it's kind of a rush decision for me.
And look at the map, I think.
And look at the map, yeah. So we're definitely gonna change it from just public, obviously. And we're gonna think about the zones that we want to have for that area. All right. So duration and frequency of special events. Special events occur only once in a calendar year and for not longer than 30 and 60 days consecutive, 30 to 60 days consecutively, you know, we can put in a number there. Current Lakeside code sets the event length at 4 days unless the extension is granted by the commission. So, I still have a hard time understanding the 30 to 60 days thing. I don't think. Sure.
My concern for that is the only once in a calendar year is up above in the temporary uses. It talked about like vegetable stands, thinking like a farmer's market that would happen once a month or something like that. So the once in a calendar year scares me for eliminating some things that could be really cool on a monthly basis here. A rock show every month or.
So are you talking about a monthly basis? Because that would be 12. This is by one person, right?
No, special event occurs only once in a calendar year.
Yeah, so what does that mean, Rob?
Well, it's an interesting idea because there isn't a definition here for a special event. So is a farmer's market a special event?
Right up above says vegetable stands.
Well, sure, because that paragraph is listing every possible type of temporary use. So it has mobile food units in there too. And a mobile food unit is definitely not a special event.
Special event
Um,
once a year.
I have a question.
Huh?
Which line item are we on or page number?
Oh, so we're still actually on,
Number 2, duration and frequency.
right, which is, so that's special events, which is A2. And I'm not sure I can give you a page number. So do you see where it says MC 11155.xxx temporary usage?
We're looking. I apologize for holding up the recession.
I think we need to print off some more information.
Oh, you're missing a page?
Yeah.
Okay, well, follow along with this and we'll make sure to spell it out as best as we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we were talking about the amount of, I still don't understand why they're saying only one event. Is it only one event per vendor?
Calendar year.
No, they're saying,
Crawdad Festival is one of them.
Or one per the whole city?
so they're saying the Crawdad Festival happens once a year.
Right, but you don't have it happen 5 times a year.
What if they wanted to do it twice?
So suppose
Okay.
Shirley wanted to do Experience Lakeside twice.
Yeah.
Give it a different name the second time.
Side again.
Like we do.
So I think of like the holiday, let's just say they.
Right,
The
that's-
holiday,
that's
they're
what I
like,
don't
say
want
they
to
did
do.
2 different weekends, take down, set up 2 different weekends in a row. Yeah, that would be,
Oh, that would be considered.
So I like the special event idea of rotating, but I'm questioning the 30, 60 days of these events. I mean, I think they should be for 4 days. 'cause
I'm actually wondering if if the situation Commissioner Comstock just brought up isn't included in the 60 days. Suppose somebody wants to set something up on the weekend, take it down during the week, come back the next weekend. You know, you could do that for 4 weeks within a 30-day period, have it be just one event.
Would it have to be a sanctioned event that's okayed by the city?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, so I mean, as far as someone coming in.
Well. And I guess the thing is, are they thinking a 30 or 60-day event? Even if it's broken down and put back together, the same event?
Who knows?
Yeah.
They would just need to revise that whole.
Is it fair to even question why we would limit how many times per year an event could happen as long as that event falls within the criteria that the community sets? Like if some sort of fucking thing comes to town and they want to do it here 6 times a year and they can permit that and get it approved, fishing tournament, whatever. And they can come here, show that it doesn't negatively impact the community, why would we limit how many times they do it?
Because then you're just like a regular business, right?
No, you're not. If you pack up your thing and you leave for 2 months at a time and you come back and you want to set up and do another boat race. And you leave for 2 months and you go to across the country and you do your event somewhere else and you want to come back and you want to do your boat race.
So each of those times where you need a re-permit.
I
you
agree.
need Another license. You need to keep your insurance.
Absolutely.
So the obligation, so it's, to do it that, you have to have funds to do that in.
Well, sure, that would be
And also
also
what it is, if I had an event, you had an event, and Shirley had an event, and everybody spent their money on your event and her event, my little event was a blowout because no one came, because all the events prior took it away. So I mean, they have to be spaced out.
But
in order for that-
that's not the place of governing body to decide. That's the place of the individual person investing in that event to look at how full
Yeah.
the things are and decide whether or not it's worth it.
Well, we want to be fair to everybody. That's what government's.
We'll give maybe an example of how it can become unfair. If I wanted to come and do an event Lakeside, it's every 2 months. If I wanted to come here and do a similar event every 2 months, how is that bothering anyone as long as it's
Mr. Hand,
Mr.
Mr. Hand, suppose you're an event organizer and you wanted to do repetitive events and you wanted a particular prime location and you tied it up with reservations so that nobody else could have it.
Well, that's where the administrator, the person deciding on the permits, could say yes or no. If I ask for those 6 a year, she might say, actually, you're trying to monopolize the summer season and we're gonna
Yes,
disallow it. And
you have to have standards in the code for the person to be, that administrator, to be able to say yes or no to an applicant fairly.
Yes.
If you let them decide on arbitrary standards of their own making, then you end up with all kinds of unfairness, or even the appearance of unfairness where none is there. So
Exactly. And
That
that's
also
why we
seems
wanted
like
to.
just picking a number is also arbitrary, because we don't know how many numbers truly start to cause a problem.
Sure.
An example was, we're talking about, doing the pine car derby for the kids on a more regular basis, because it was a big hit. And so that would happen more than once a year too. Just, once just seems so harsh, like we go up a little bit more to encourage repeat events, like a farmer's market coming every Friday afternoon would be awesome, or once a month, Carl's Rock Show, we love it. It would be great if he could do one at Christmas time and then again in summer. One is just really like.
Yeah.
I like the
Focus
idea of more than one.
Yeah.
Is,
I mean, I guess we're probably all okay with more than one.
yeah,
Or are we okay with 6? How does everyone feel about 6?
6 sounds like an
I'm just-
excessive amount.
Okay, then 4.
like a couple, which means, you're gonna have a lot of events. But I think there should be more than one, of course.
How about the duration and frequency of special event occurs only once per quarter?
Yeah, something like that. I'm sorry,
Yeah, SS Bertram said once per quarter. I mean, and we're asking, would that be acceptable?
like once per quarter.
Annual quarter, yeah, so once in the winter, once in the spring, once in the fall,
Yeah.
once in the summer.
Once per season.
I like that idea because it's 4, except for the fact that we have such a short summer season.
Yeah.
And that we really need to try to, as a community, maximize the use of our city during that season.
Well, I mean, you know, and there's one event per quarter, so that would allow mobile units to participate in those main events.
I like the idea of the special events spread out and more of different kinds. Instead of one event that's, 4 times of fishing. I know granted there, but to have varieties of community things instead of just, again.
Could
one
I
identity.
suggest something kind of nerdy? If you want to think about it, is to change this up so that you take out how many times per year and replace consecutive days with total days per year.
I think that would be a better.
So yeah, so your farmer's market could meet once a week for however many weeks it takes to get to that total number of days,
Yeah.
right?
I think that would be a better solution than this.
Yeah, we like that a
I
lot.
like that.
Yep.
Because I really can't see an event for 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, we like that. And that allows for the fact that some events could have a longer duration than others.
Yeah.
So this is one, unfortunately, I think we're gonna have to think about. Due to the fact that we're kind of changing the dynamic here. We're talking about total days instead of 360 days. So does anybody have any preliminary thoughts on total days? I mean, well, I guess we could go with just 30 total days.
You mentioned 45 for other things in the same section, so that might be a place to start the conversation.
Exactly, yeah, 45 total, still fits in with all of the other parameters.
So now here's the scary thing. 45 days, a typical event's 3 to 4 days.
Yeah.
45 days, that means 10 events.
It also does allow for setup and breakdown.
Yeah.
Think of one long, like, music festival.
30 days of music festival.
If a music festival came to Lakeside that was legitimately made sense for 30 days,
Then we should do it.
then we should do it because that is an incredible impact on our community. I mean, it's an opportunity. I mean, it seems unreasonable and we all
I still would
understand
like to
it,
see
but
any
wow.
community that does. 30 day event. So, let's consider this in regards to total days. I think we pretty much decided that, right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
And come up with a number based upon some evaluation of it. Because like I said, when you look at my scenario, 45 days is, 11 events or whatever, 12 events. That's an awful lot of events. But on the other hand, it does allow a lot of flexibility.
And I think flexibility is a real
45,
key.
So I'm thinking a number lower than 45, but I think this is something we need to think about. What do you guys think?
Definitely think about it.
Well, total day. And I'd rather take the time to get this thing right, and not just have it all decided in one night. Sacrifice on the perspective. All right,
But I
so,
do have a question,
Sure.
just a comment. The very fact that our little city of Lakeside at this very moment is boring. And if this particular type of agreement with all of these multiple events can start hyping and jacking up the interest in it, then we should do whatever it takes possible to do it.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
I cannot agree more. We don't have the luxury to be.
With some guardrails.
The roof
Well,
is
yes,
coming back next year.
Which is exactly what we're
Should
doing with this whole thing. It needs some guardrails.
While still respecting and protecting brick and mortar, but growing our community
Sure.
and opening our doors so that even the brick and mortar businesses can prosper as well.
And like I was explaining in the last meeting, there's a complementary relationship between temporary and permanent businesses. You know, and we just got to make sure that we're maximizing both.
I have this from the city of Corvallis, their ordinance 2023-03. And the very first paragraph is the purpose regarding their food carts. And it says the purpose hereof is to permit mobile food units. Let's just think of our whole section we're talking about now. Sited on private property on a year-round basis, notwithstanding local regulation to the contrary. The city finds that mobile food units encourage a pedestrian-oriented environment, help to create a visually attractive atmosphere, streetscape, and promote overall commerce. And I feel that's true for the events and the food carts. I don't feel that they take away from the big brick and mortar as much as they actually are starting to help bring folks into Lakeside too.
If we do it right.
Yeah,
It's
of course.
it's a plus. But we want to make sure that it's that right balance between the two. That's obviously what we're here for. Adam?
Since the last meeting we had, we discussed this conflict potential between the temporary businesses and the permanent businesses. And you and I disagreed at that time, and I took the opportunity to speak with several of the business folks about it. And to reiterate what I said then, almost every business owner I've talked to in this town sees temporary events, be they special events, food trucks, these things as a positive for our community this time. They see the opportunities that it brings are much more valuable than the potential risk.
But nobody's disputing that.
No, I agree.
That's not in
Expressing
dispute.
that opinion.
My point, the other meeting was very simply that we don't, because we have a finite amount of customers in Lakeside. Bottom line, you gotta understand that right now, there's a finite amount. There's not that many of them out there. A struggling business needs to, you know, we're all fighting for the same apple at this point. The whole point behind doing, you know, special events and stuff like that is to change that number. You want to get that base number up as far as possible. And that's the whole point behind food trucks, behind temporary operations, you know, temporary businesses and stuff like that, is to drive that figure up.
No, absolutely. I mean, right now in Lakeside, we have a couple different restaurant locations, for instance, that sit empty. And any one of these food trucks could become successful in the next year or two and move into and fill what is now an empty spot.
Right. And
And
that's
those
the
are huge
ultimate.
opportunities. If they don't find that opportunity in Lakeside, they go find that opportunity somewhere else.
But the ultimate goal is to fill up those permanent businesses and move people in. And a good way to do it is to transition, you know, and it's a matter of choice for, yes, please. Go ahead.
Is this me you're calling on?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. All right, and I completely
Explain
came
your feelings
from
about
the same mindset that you were at, where we have a finite number of participants or purchasers or customers, if we look at it that way. So the flip side of that is, just like those signs that you guys just put out at the road that are beautiful, experience Lakeside, you're drumming up more people who are purchasers, consumers. And the reason that we're able to do that is because we have new and unique experiences. You have events. And when you have events, you have to bring in people who can support the people who want to eat and drink and dance at those events, just like in the Oktoberfest thing where you had the band and the brewery and all kinds of tents for that event. That brings people to Lakeside. That's one of the only reasons that I ever wanted to either purchase or be a part of Lakeside, is because you guys did such a great job advertising it with that event. And so with that said, having events where you bring in businesses and you bring in people, those things are within a community and they interact in a parallel situation. You have more people who come in at certain seasons and you have more businesses who need to come in to support the more people who come in at those seasons. So it's not a, hey, we have 7 businesses and we can only sustain 49 customers. It is, we have seasons where we can have 1,049 customers in a day, and we can use an additional 3 or 4 or 7 or 12 businesses to support those extra 149 people who come in. And then they're going to come in every year. And yes, they're going to go away. They're not our fixed people. They're not the ones who support our community every day, but some of them will. And getting through those high seasons help all of the businesses to help the whole town get through those high seasons to support those low seasons.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, and I think we're in agreement on, I think everybody's in agreement on this whole issue. Permanent versus temporary. I don't see where there's any real gap. So I'm sorry, I kind of diverted from our purpose tonight to go through the specifics. And I think that's where things will kind of meld out as to the differences between temporary and permanent and the values of both. But, you know, I think we've reiterated time and time again that both are valuable and both are
I
important.
think that's the reason for the work sessions, and I appreciate being
Right. Well, good. So let's continue on. And I do apologize, I kind of went off on a tangent, but so be it. We're on MC 155.xxx temporary uses. We are now down to permit application, which is actually number 3. Yeah, but it should be a 3. And then a 3A, and this is the discussion about days. The complete application and payment of the permit fee has been received by the city no less than 180 days prior to the beginning of an event. I know there was a lot of discussion about this.
I brought the event permit for you from the city of Lakeside that Melissa's recently redone the form for. And it even says at the very top, they submit 30 days prior. She absolutely did not want to accept a permit special event permit application 180 days in advance.
She recommended no more than 60 days in advance.
Wow, 30 days.
Yes, sir.
How are you getting all?
Great question.
It is the city.
How would you get fire permits, traffic permits, all that type of stuff? How can a city manager set it up within 30 days?
That was our question at the time.
We have the same questions, but that's what the process is right now. That's why my suggestion was a complete application and payment event fee has been received and approved by the city. Because I'm thinking that's gonna need some work.
So you're saying you would be willing to do a completed application, an approved application for 30 days?
Approved application by the city of by the city out a day in there, a time limit in there, because we don't know if that application's gonna change, you know.
So that doesn't protect you though. If you don't have a time limit in there, the city manager can sit on it
Oh,
for a
right.
year.
And I think that's the second section. Indeed, it talks about how long the
Up to approve it after you turn
Right.
it in.
A is saying you have to turn it in to her.
Right.
So
So that's the whole deal about that.
if we chose 30 days, that she could sit, that if we chose to say that the city needs to approve permits within 30 days of receiving them, which seems fair to me, then they not take more than a month to approve your permit. And then we say she needs to see it. Yeah, I feel like 60 days before the event is much more reasonable than 80.
But what about all your marketing, and all the planning for it? I mean, don't you?
That's why we applied 180 days in advance, because how do you even book vendors
Right.
without an approved permit?
Right,
So
And
the,
so-
We would choose to do it way ahead of time.
180 days.
But in the occurrence that something comes up, many times in my event career, opportunities have popped up within a month or two, and you gotta make something happen.
so the events that I went to were typically started the day after the other event closed.
I
Just so
get
you
that.
know, the time frame has got to be long.
That's a very specific type of event. There are all.
No,
no,
events that'll be way-
She's backed up the 30 days verbally on, and in writing on many, many occasions since January. Just the other day, she told them, this is why you shouldn't have applied so early.
Just
1000%.
she got in my butt about that. So I disagree. She wants the permits to come in at the last minute after all the planning, after all the booking, after all that has been
Taking
done.
people's money.
Yeah, if she asked us, and I'm not complaining, but she asked us to do all that legwork, book all our vendors, book all our entertainment, book all our safety and all that jazz before we ever apply for a permit, and then bring it to her at the last minute and cross our fingers that after we've already spent the money and done the work for the last 6 months, then she'll approve.
So we have a city with one city manager, one receptionist, billing clerk, and 1,000 other jobs, and one half-time director. And she thinks she can pull these things out in 30 days.
We disagreed for the last 6 months.
So what do you guys think?
Could I interject for a second?
Yeah, please, Rob.
So I'm hearing concerns from our event organizers over here about requirements for things that aren't even in this code draft. So you're talking about having vendors contracted and things booked, and none of those are listed here as requirements for event approval.
I understand.
It's all
So
the work that,
So this is more like you have an event in mind, you know where you want it, you know how big you want it to be, you know when you want it to happen, you know where you want it to happen. But it doesn't say you have to have your bands booked and your vendors contracted. But the thing is, if you set approval criteria in a code, those are the approval
No,
criteria.
I'm not disagreeing. I think
When you turn in your application, it should be set.
Yeah,
And 180 days is also a long amount of time, because like the business owners came up with the holiday idea much shorter than 180 days in advance. Same with all of the kids' events, they were month after month, and so 180 days is not only super restrictive, like, for a last minute rock show, like, oh, I wanna do one in September. He really has the time to plan it all, but he's now 180 days out and can't do it till the following year in September.
I agree that I should be trying to get my permit at 180 days ahead of time. That's what I agree that what I should do. I also believe that we shouldn't eliminate folks who
Smaller
didn't
events.
have that opportunity.
Or
I
smaller
feel like it
events.
should be 1 to 2 months ahead of time. I think 30 days is fair. If we can get a permit approved and everybody knows what's up at 30 days ahead of time.
But you also have to remember, the event has to be successful. Because
course.
unsuccessful events will just tank us.
No one doing an
Especially
event
since
would
we're in-
spend all
Okay,
this
so
time.
if you accept an application 30 days before the event and you give the city manager 30 days to approve it, now you're looking at potentially not having approval until the day of the event. I don't think that's what you want either.
No,
Right, like 60.
I brought up 60 earlier. That gives you 60 days. If you turn the permit in 60 days before the event, that gives us 30 days to get it approved. And then we're 30 days ahead, it's approved and we move forward.
I just don't know with our man hours.
think-
Well, our man
Yes,
hours,
go ahead.
I think what I am hearing here is that they want to have something in code, 60 days or 90 days, whatever that may be, so that an event can happen, even if it's a smaller event, that's gonna bring stuff in that you can fit in between events that are already going on. That allowing 60 or 90-day application period would give just a little bit of leniency so that another event can squeeze in there where we don't have anything happen.
I mean, it's our summer season is only 3 months. And we're saying that in spring, in early spring, if in April, an opportunity comes to us that we say, nope, sorry, that'll have to happen next summer.
But it's the duration of that opportunity. It should hit way before. This is my planning bias.
so
It needs to be planned ahead of time.
Commissioner
With
Kraut,
small events, no one in their right mind is gonna pay all that money and spend all that time to make an event that they don't think is gonna be successful. The women's club or some, and some counselors and the fire department might be involved in a chili cook-off in August. I mean, they have the food prep people, they feel as though it would be a successful event. They're planning it now in June.
Yeah,
And so 60 days, I think, is a legit amount of time for smaller events that we're not gonna do. I'm sure they're planning Brew Fest for
Yeah.
2024. They're not gonna wait till 60 days, just like we didn't wanna wait for experience on a big
Yeah.
event. You're gonna turn it in.
and to be honest with you, my only concern about this number is simply, can the city do the proper job of making sure that all the pieces are in place on there?
Well, they have 30
In
days.
other words,
right?
the fire and so on and so.
yeah,
on.
all that is
They
in
have
section
30
D.
days.
Yeah, that's in section D. Shall make a decision if special events fully satisfy the conditions of A.
So what if what if we said like 45 to 180 days? So you could do it 6 months in advance. You know, so you do all your planning.
To do
So,
the Yeah,
so, you know, or if you do it in 45 days, they have to at least approve it within 30, so you still have 15 days to prepare.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
approval.
and this is
Or
gonna
not.
be something that's done on the city level now and not the planning commission level.
Right.
Which might be the reason they have 180 days out there.
I just think I'm
I mean, I'm okay with 60 days, I believe. If that's something that Melissa can live with.
well, I'm
She can live with 30 because she can make more.
No, I want her, I'm sure that was what she said, but I want her to think about it and tell us.
It's on the form. She just.
No,
made
I
that
see
form.
that, I see that, I got you, I know, I just,
I'd like to share my
I'm
experience.
very. Want to make sure we do this right.
The process currently in place for like Experience Lakeside, for instance. The way I understand it is we turned in our permits. The city then passes that along to all the other bodies. And then they have, I think, 2 weeks to respond.
Mhm.
And if they don't respond, the city makes a decision anyways. So the current process is well within 30 days.
That's what we do. So if fire doesn't respond, we just say, well, what the heck. it probably won't work.
And that we were told that that is what critical is. You give those agents.
That is exactly
opportunity
correct.
To respond.
This is,
That's
Choose
not
to not
acceptable.
respond.
that is the procedure, not just for special events, but for any decision-making process where another agency or department is being given the opportunity to comment.
We can't require the county to respond. We can only say that we told you so. We told you we were gonna do this and you didn't respond, so we went ahead with.
And likewise, you can't hold a valid application for an extended period of time because someone hasn't commented.
Well, I think when we do send out the request from now on, we put it in there. If you don't respond in 2 weeks, we'll say, that says something, you are waiving your whatever.
And that may have already happened.
Oh, they do.
They do. So
Yeah.
they do say, hey, if you don't, because I noticed in here when we were talking, somewhere in here about the talking of the fire, that they needed to obtain a fire certificate or the fire department waived.
That's not on special events.
Oh, was in something else. Okay.
Yes.
But I'm just saying that should be the standard. And that they say, hey, if you didn't respond in 2 weeks, you actually said it was not worth getting a certificate. But that's a city thing, so that's not mine. All right, well, what does everybody feel about 60 days?
I just think of the event planner, is 60 days enough? I mean, I think of them having to get, let's just say, bands and vendors and booths, and they'd be doing that months and months in advance.
That's
but-
You're-
why they
but
kind
they
of
also
need the
have the
180
risk of
days
not
up
getting the
front.
permit. So they're doing
You're
all-
setting a minimum, not a maximum.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, so I mean, they can go out as far as they
fine,
want,
okay,
but 60 days, the city has to
Yeah.
react on it, and note the word complete application too. So they should already have all their pieces together about where the event's gonna be, how many people they expect it. I don't know how thorough we are here.
That was part of the discussion as well this year with Experience Lakeside was. The city manager expected us to have what we felt was an undue level of information way too, you know what I mean, early. She, not only did she ask us to tell her where the booths were gonna be, for instance, and we gave her a map on Park Street, there was a point in the conversation before we pushed back where she wanted us to tell her exactly who was gonna be in each one of the booths. You know what I mean? Not only that we told her we wanted to have a band in this location, she was asking us at that time to tell her who the band was gonna be. You know what I mean? And that's where I draw the line.
That type of thing's up to the city. It's not
I get it. It has to do with what we have here.
that is something that you can discuss with Melissa.
Oh, yeah.
And you knew I was gonna say that, so. All right, so we're going with 60 days, I guess. What do you guys think? We're all good? Thank you.
is 60 days still a lot for the last minute planning?
I don't think so.
We put together the holiday event this past season in about 30 days.
I think 60 is a good number.
60 days, you have to do it.
I'm happy with 60 days
Okay,
to turn in the application as long as I can give an application, a response within 30 days.
okay, the applicant, if different than the property owner, must provide proof of owner's permission to place the use of on the property with the application, obviously. Applicant must be occupied, accompanied by information sufficient to ensure the event is compliant with permitting requirements at the time of the application. So that's why you get those questions. And that's between you and the city as to what's required. The city administrator shall issue a decision on any special event to the application that is fully satisfies the conditions A through C above within 30 days of the receipt. I'm good with the 30 days? Okay. All right, so ingress egress number 5. Ingress egress conforms to the requirements of MC 155.260. Pretty straightforward. Visual clearance. Use does not violate visual clearance codes. First, parking. There is sufficient parking to accommodate the temporary use and other uses existing on the site. Off-site impacts. The use does not create adverse off-site impacts, including vehicle traffic, noise, odors, vibrations, glare, lights that affect the adjoining use in the manner in which other uses allowed outright in the district do not affect the adjoining use. And stop me if you want, because all these are not really marked up. Sanitation, the use is adequately served by the sewer and septic system and water as equitable. Restrooms and hand washing facilities are sufficient. Trash receptacles disposal are sufficient and do not involve the use of city waste receptacles. Resources and the plan for post-event site cleanup are adequate. City administrator may elect to require the event organizer to post a bond to ensure post-event site cleanup is completed. Number 11, licensing. The applicant shall be responsible for acquiring and maintaining all required licenses and permits. Mitigation and liability insurance. The applicant shall enter into a hold harmless agreement with the city of Lakeside, obtain comprehensive general liability for the event with limits not less than 1 million and listing the city of Lakeside as the additional insurer.
I have help here.
Okay,
The leading question to my concern is, for instance, the holiday event that we had this year was held fully on private property at Dave's property. We were not at that time required to get a permit for that because it happened fully on his private property. And then we're gonna say we have to get insurance that for the city for activities that would then happen off of city on private property. You know what I'm getting at? If we do an event, whether it's permitted or not, and it's on private property, and any sort of liabilities that happen within that private property are not the responsibility of the city, why would we get insurance that then pays to the city?
any comments, Rob?
I feel like we should have
Yeah.
insurance that pays. to-
Because you're
Property.
mischaracterizing this. It's not insurance that pays to the city. It's insurance that covers the city from damages associated with the event.
I think I understand 100%.
Okay.
That event happens totally outside of the city's responsibility, AKA
Well-
private property.
So
So
somebody gets hurt on the private property. Okay, you want the event organizer to have insurance to cover that person from their losses. And then you also want the city named so the person doesn't turn around and say, but the city approved this event the way it happened, and then sue the city for damages in turn. That's why it's required.
The event insurance would not. As I have researched and looked at event insurance very heavily in the last 30 days and read every line per.
This is a very standard piece of language in special event codes that I've read.
I'm not
So-
discouraging.
it is to protect the city. I mean, we always go after the deepest pocket. Although Lakeside might not be the deepest pocket, but essentially, the city has to protect.
I think when it's on private property, like at the lodge or at Osprey, they can get a binder for that event for the weekend to name the city at almost no additional cost to their
Right.
liability insurance. It
Exactly.
doesn't say it has to be event insurance, just general liability, which they already have. And then they can do the city as additional insured and send a certificate. But I think, because it's not saying event insurance, just general liability, which all the businesses should already have.
And that's how we operated for the holiday event.
Right.
Is
And
they
this-
told us that I spoke with my insurance and they told me that everything we're gonna do here is covered under the policy.
And I guarantee you, just like Rob said, this will always be in there. This is not something that.
I'm not trying to remove it. I'm not saying to remove it.
No, I
I'm
know.
just saying, do it.
My point is why, and now I understand it better since Rob explained it. All right, so now that we've been through special events, what if the city manager says no? Are we going to allow an appeal?
And that's absolutely necessary for justice. I mean, and
Who is it appealed to?
you in the city council. I said, city council, honestly. That's the government, the person who holds the check and balance to the city manager.
Is city council qualified as we are or something like that, or?
I don't think,
I think you're more.
It's not really a thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine. I'm good with city council.
I think to remind you, part of your objective was to take the planning commission out of special
Yes,
events.
exactly. Oh, yeah, that was our hidden objective. Now you know it turned out.
And from my perspective, that's completely makes sense. You guys
Okay,
only meet-
so are we all?
It's
good
too
with,
slow.
We all good with the city council?
Okay.
Okay.
The question I have with city council is once a month.
The city council pretty frequently calls meetings for a special purpose if they have to.
Okay. Like I say, if something's not approved and they challenge it, how long does it take for the city council to act on it?
Yeah,
Mhm.
And that falls on the organizer if they choose to wait till the last minute.
right. I mean, if it's rejected, it's rejected, and then you go through the process. All right, so temporary sales office for subdivisions. Does anybody have anything to say about this section? Okay. Done.
Yeah, these are all
So now we are on C. Did we lose?
We lost them.
Okay. So we're on C. Good. Temporary buildings, trailers, kiosks, mobile food units, and other structures. Figure out who shall approve with conditions, or deny an application for the placement and use of the temporary building, trailer, kiosk, mobile food unit, or other structure based on this criteria. I think that boils down to planning director.
Does it? Let me look at this.
Or we could set it as the city administrator, and the city administrator can delegate.
Yep.
Why don't we just put it at the city administrator? I think that probably is. a better route. Yeah,
That one could have gone either way.
it could have. Try to get it to you.
Okay, before you jump down to the next yellow spot,
Mhm.
number one, location.
Right,
Numbers A and B, I noticed an issue with it this morning. Both of them start with in zones where eating and drinking establishments are allowed.
yeah, that's,
And we're talking about something broader than mobile food units. It's temporary buildings, trailers, kiosks, mobile food units, and other structures. So I think rather than saying in zones where eating and drinking establishments are allowed, it should be in zones where the temporary building or use is allowed.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm not sure why they're using eating and drinking establishments. Because that seems a little specific to me.
It does. Yeah, because this code section is about more than food.
Right.
A and B could be residential areas because in my house, you're allowed to drink and eat. That's right.
Well, I'm coming over.
Well, is your,
I can drink at your house. I'm coming over.
but is your house an eating or drinking establishment?
Oh, but you're not a staff.
Yeah. But yeah,
All right. Yeah, so that's good. That's a good change. So number C, in the parking area of a manufacturing business or purposes of primary servicing the employees of the manufacturing business in non-residential zones for no more than 3 hours. So I think is that a restriction only to be in manufacturing business?
no, the idea here was, and this goes back to having a mobile food unit show up at the factory parking lot and all
Oh,
the
I
workers
remember
come out and
these
buy
days.
lunch. Yes, I've done it too. Okay, so in the model code, they had this language in there that they would allow anything in this temporary use category to take place in the parking lot of a manufacturing business for the employees of that business. So that's one option. And then a different version of the same thing is to allow any type of temporary building or use that's on the list in a non-residential zone for no more than 3 hours, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The second, in a non-residential.
Very
zone,
rarely are they gonna be.
no more than 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about your commercial areas, you do want, especially mobile food units and stuff like that, you do want to traffic.
Yeah.
So, yep,
Say that part again, you didn't make sense, because I live in general commercial.
right. So in general commercial, the moving around of traffic is probably not a good word, but in general commercial, you have to think of it as businesses. This is the business going down in the area, providing it meets the other requirements. You know, it's what you would expect. And they're only there for 3 hours, so.
Would that then allow Joe Schmo food truck driving down 101 to pull into Lakeside? Pull up onto an improved spot that doesn't break any other rules, sit there for 3 hours and leave?
Does he have a business license?
Sure.
Yeah, he'd have to have a business license and he'd have to meet all of the other siting requirements. He'd have to have the property owner's permission. He'd have to meet the lot standards, all the other stuff that's here. But yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of more of a general broad thing.
It just allows for a short-term temporary thing that comes and goes without impacting and bothering the city.
so
There you go.
so this might be a little technical, but A and B on this draft proposal allows that sort of thing for 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, if it's in a zone that allows whatever that temporary activity is.
And also,
Number C here allows temporary activities that aren't permitted in that zone, but only for up to 3 hours.
but it also has to be done in their parking of the business that is there.
Well, there are other
There's
requirements.
2 options here for C. One is in a parking lot of a manufacturing business. That was somebody in the model code thinking about the lunch trucks only, right?
Yeah.
The second option has nothing to do with parking lots, nothing to do with manufacturing business. It's anywhere in a non-residential zone for up to 3 hours.
As long as he meets, like we said, all.
as long as they
Yeah,
meet
sure.
all the other criteria.
All right. Number D, in residential zones areas, as long as they stay in one location no more than 15 minutes.
So the idea behind this was your ice cream truck or some similar traveling business going through neighborhoods. And they're only supposed to stay in one spot for up to 15 minutes. The question before you is whether you want to allow that kind of activity restricted to no more than 15 minutes. You want the restriction to be just in residential zones, or do you want it to be in residential areas? So for example, David's in a residential area, but he's not zoned residential. So if you make this residential zones, an ice cream truck could park in the right of way outside his house and sit there all day. But if you if you make this restriction apply to residential areas, they have to just pass through because he's in a residential area. That's what you have to decide.
So an area. Say that, repeat that again.
Do you want the 15-minute restriction on traveling businesses to apply to residential neighborhoods or just residential zones? If you apply it to residential neighborhoods, then it's residential neighborhoods in whatever zone.
For instance, the condo area over there is zoned, if I'm not mistaken, marine commercial, but it's clearly a residential area.
Yes.
So residential area simply means you want to park in front of your house for whatever, 3 hours.
We just happen to have a lot of
Yeah,
residential areas that are non-conforming for the zone here.
yes,
Yeah.
55% of the commercial zone is residential.
Right,
Of course, it says no more than 15 minutes. So I mean, we can't be
Yeah.
there.
right.
So I'm for residential areas. Adam?
At the last meeting, please correct me if I'm wrong, we discussed that the example, for instance, of a mobile dog washing unit that pull up in front of your house. Because they're coming there to serve a specific service would not be covered under that 15-minute limit.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
It's because we
Plumbers.
crafted a definition for transient businesses that excludes service providers.
I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't falling under that 15.
Right.
All right, good. Citing requirements. The location is within a hard surfaced area. Now, we had a lot of,
I don't agree with that.
questions about this. So, Carl, you're saying that gravel, you think gravel is okay? Is
Well,
what I remember your argument
I
about that.
just, you talk about RV parks or anything like that, and all the requirements are crushed gravel or something like that. Isn't that what it's called? I mean, they don't have to have pads. They don't have to have concrete pads or asphalt. That's all they need is crushed gravel. Why does a food truck need to have concrete pad?
Well, there's more traffic with a food truck. And I think we've seen an example of when you don't put cement. Although that's kind of vehicle traffic on Airport and 8 of where it looks like we're in Puddle City.
And that's a permanent, not a temporary.
Yeah,
Uh-huh,
don't
this
need-
is just temporary only. And temporary definitely should
But-
be
but
allowed on gravel.
remember how long temporary can be there?
Okay,
45 days.
take the example of the two food carts out by the hot shop.
Or the event field at Osprey Point, or the events area at the park. There are lots of examples.
Crushed rocks.
So who's gonna fix the potholes in the ruts?
The
Wolfie
property,
Beach, the
Yeah.
county,
you're not on public property.
That's what I mean.
Lakeside Junction, the property owner.
Yeah, the food truck is not located on public responsibilities
Right,
property.
it's the.
And that's another
landowner.
thing we wanna talk about on that one. But I'm
This is
just
temporary.
thinking, you know, these are rut holes and stuff like that. Do you really want to say it that way?
Unless there is some other code that forbids me as a property owner from having ruts in my driveway. Yes.
The streets, the
You
city.
you as the city don't tell me I can't. have a
Well,
rut in my driveway.
Actually, if I could, because you mentioned other codes. If you allow these temporary business activities on a non-paved surface, you will be requiring them to have paved parking spaces, but not to be sited on pavement themselves. Which
So we're
is,
saying we can't have temporary events at Osprey because it's all grass field. And they can't.
this is not the temporary event code.
Yeah,
There's
this is,
temporary buildings and mobile food units. That would include Wolfie Beach. There's, oh, they don't park on pavement either. They park on gravel at Wolfie.
What are we
Unless they
talking?
Pay a day use fee to go.
What are we
into it.
talking about, Shirley?
It's right, temporary trailers, mobile food units, siting requirements, hard surfaced area. The food trucks go on Wolfie Beach on gravel, and the parking to serve those is also on gravel. Because they
Okay.
park at Wolfie, not on the paved day use area. So it would eliminate food trucks from being at events, right, if they are temporary and a mobile food unit.
Or a new attraction in the area is a guy who has a big long trailer that he set up an axe throwing thing inside of it. You know what I mean? And he could pull up at any one of our events and would be considered a temporary kiosk, temporary structure, whatever.
Mhm.
And now we would say that he can't do that on the field at Osprey.
Or we can eliminate Wolfie altogether for every event.
And further, I mean, do we believe that the planning commission and us know better than do the health departments? About these sort of things?
now you brought up that issue is, remember, we're talking about land use code, not health code. The health department decides what's going on with the health.
I understand what you're saying.
There's the restricted code. You know, we're going beyond that, which is necessary for the city to function, so. Don't equate the two in that regards. When I did my research on this, the reasons that they brought up were things like the destroying of the ground, the potholes, the ruts and stuff like that, especially when we live in an environment where it's raining all the time. I mean, if there's some guarantee that the line is flattened out or leveled and looking nice every time.
Does any part of our commercial zone codes require that the parking lot and for instance, the lodge be maintained at a certain level? Is that already part of the code?
It has to be developed.
It has to be paved. It has to have curb
Yeah.
stops.
What
I don't know what
happens
you
in
mean by
future is
level.
What happens with anything, you know, nothing's really required to be.
I think the difference being a mobile food unit acting as a permanent structure as opposed to this section we're on, temporary. That truly does eliminate Wolfie Beach from any food trucks. 1,000%. And potholes and all of that aren't really the consideration of a temporary building or that. That would be the consideration of the property owner. I mean, and if it's a permanent structure, then definitely make some rules for that, but this is temporary. So you're saying we now have to get the county to pay Wolfie Beach to have a mobile food unit down here. I think we're gonna have the sidewalks done for the event, so.
I think your logic makes complete sense for more permanent structure, but for something that can pop up and be gone in 2 days or a day. To require that to happen on a paved structure in the streets.
So why do you think it was made, this requirement was done in the first place? Was there a reason why they put that on there? Or was it just off the top? I mean, there must have been
That's from the model code.
history to know that, yeah.
Right.
Stop the dust from major cities, because gravel just has, gravel would be dusty. It's pretty much why they would put that in a major city.
And cities are paying.
Yeah.
Lakeside, our
We're
roads
okay.
aren't even,
We're not-
let alone.
I'm worried about
we-
the corner up there too.
Yeah, we certainly have roads where they.
I'm worried about the corner up there too. Where the food booth.
Yeah, that would forbid the city from using that new
And,
property.
you know,
use.
That property that the city bought. Okay. When we were discussing it before, it was those RVs were scheduled to go on to crushed rock.
Right,
If
but
they
the
wanted to-
traffic of an RV is you don't have people standing in line.
The RV could be there for 5 days and another one come in and go out, another one come in. It could be temporary.
Well, yeah,
If
but
the
I'm
city
talking
wanted
about
to
the-
put trucks there, let food trucks go in there, there'd be an added expense to have to pay that whole lot. Not that,
I don't know.
And this also doesn't only cover food trucks. It could pop up, it could just be a craft vendor, a person, the city wants to say, we're gonna allow farmers or craft vendors to show up on Saturdays. Every Saturday, we got 4 spots right there and you can book them, 2 months in advance and da. This would require the city to pave it before that would be allowed.
Well, this is a temporary building, trailer,
Right.
kiosk, or other.
So we have lots of them. It's like the leather guy comes in a trailer,
Yep.
a temporary trailer.
At the rock show that happened last summer over at the, Road in 8th on Lawrence property, that sort of thing,
Yeah, that's
could not
right.
have happened. And there were some large mobile units, you know what I mean? We have a vendor who lives in Lakeside, is very experienced, who runs the big red cowboy hats and belt buckles situation. You've seen that at events around town. It's another example.
I don't know. I'm concerned. You know, and you guys make a very convincing argument. But I'm still concerned about, a bunch of holes all over the place.
Suggestion,
Wolfie Beach, Wolfie Beach on Lawrence Lot, our responsibility is temporary.
suggestion.
Does the county fix those spots?
Beg your pardon?
Does the county fix Wolfie Beach when they're done?
But that's up to them unless you have a code about their parks. This is talking
Suggestion,
about just temporary buildings. Temporary buildings being less than the 45 days. There's not gonna be potholes at Wolfie Beach because people don't drive up to the food truck. They walk, they park on gravel and walk.
And 45 is the maximum. I think we all understand that the vast majority, 95% of events, are gonna be 2 days, 3 days.
Yeah,
Rob,
suggestion.
yes,
I think,
please.
I think
I'm
you
gonna
should
swap
have
here.
me contact planners in other jurisdictions and ask them why they adopted
Yeah,
this into
let's
their
do that,
codes.
because I mean,
Because we may
that's
find
a
it's
good
not
point.
applicable.
I just, yeah. Like you're saying, it might not be such a big deal. So maybe if we get more information on that. It just,
Even Brute Fest, they put.
Yeah, I know.
They put
I
all
mean,
kinds of vendors down. in
there's
Wolfie Beach.
there's not a lot of,
They can't do
there's not a
that.
lot of.
Yeah, so
about what you're saying.
What you're effectively arguing at the moment is that the reason for not having this code requirement is that we've never had this code requirement. And so it's not really, you can't have a sensible discussion about it if you don't know why it's there.
Right, and that's why.
So
we need to get
it's
some more
entirely
information.
possible. It's as David suggested that this is a bigger city issue
Yeah,
and that we may ask other jurisdictions and they may give us a bigger city answer.
That's all we can ask, is
Yeah.
that it be considered our, this
I
is still a
still-
rural community.
I still think that if you're going to require it to be paved, then you gotta require all the RV parks to pave.
That's my street.
Well,
I was just playing.
I think at this point, though, Rob's gonna go back and get some more information why this is here. And is it really a big deal? Because like I said, when I did my research, I got varying things and really interesting stuff about food courts, by the way, food truck courts.
That is also permanent, right? That food court development would be more of a permanent
Yeah.
type of business. This is strictly temporary.
Right, and the beauty about a food court type of thing is somebody can go there and just leave their truck there. No leaving in 45 days or any of that weird stuff. So, but that's another subject.
Can I ask one more question for you?
Sure.
Is it reasonable to, within those examples that Rob goes and finds, that we make sure we have examples of towns that are rural in nature like our own?
Yeah, sure.
Well, if he's gonna,
Ask Portland and Eugene and Roseburg.
That would be useless. Yes.
Rob's gonna get the logic behind this paved gravel thing. And I think that's what I don't have the logic of it, so I really, All right. So I was,
Before you look for the next
okay, please.
yellow area, I'm not going to make a recommendation. I just want to make sure you've thought about it. Under siting requirements, D and E, they both start with the location of any transient business and then sets restrictions on a distance from the entrance from a permanent business or a competing permanent business.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure you only intend to apply that to transient businesses and not to any temporary use.
Well, what do you mean by temporary use?
Temporary buildings, trailers, kiosks, and other structures, not so much transient business. If you mean to apply it just to transient businesses, that's, it's fine. I just want to make sure that it's what you want.
I think that's what we're talking about. We should change that. And I see in here that we've got the change in regards to, they would have to ask, even though it's not on a certain owner's property, they would have to just simply ask the other owner if it's okay to look.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. So do you want me to go through all the citing requirements again, or shall we move to the next section? Okay, we'll move to the next section. Property owner authorization. Pretty much boilerplate. An applicant of different from the property owner has proof of owner's permission to place the use on the property. Lot standards. Lot development standards are for the underlining zone on the map. What does that mean? Lot development standards for, and
Yeah, that's setbacks, structure heights, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And our favorite ingress egress is adequate, does not raise safety concerns when the proposed use is combined with other uses of the site. Visual clearance, again, like we've talked about before, does not conflict. Parking, there's sufficient parking to accommodate particular use and other uses existing on the site. Drive-through service. The use shall not authorize drive-through service. Only pedestrian and walk-up traffic is allowed.
And that addresses a lot of your concerns about roads.
For the example that I'm thinking of, yeah. Because that's not, yeah. But like I said, I need to understand the logic behind that. It's just me. Okay, off-site impacts. The use does not create an adverse off-site impact, including vehicle traffic, noise, odors, vibrations, glares, or lights that affect the adjoining use in any manner in which other uses allowed outright in the district do not affect the adjoining use. Utilities.
This past year, we put up 40,000 Christmas lights on 8th Street. How's that impacted by the last section you just read?
Yeah.
does not create an adverse off-site impact. Did it create an adverse off-site impact?
Well, that's not for me to judge. Wouldn't that be the neighbor?
No neighbor said anything except moving off.
Well, I get it.
Yeah, if a neighbor complained,
I mean, because we do have
Responsible, but
residential
you did get
within
approved.
that commercial.
did you not get approval by the city manager? Right? You just bring them up.
We put them all on private property.
Yeah.
Oh, on private property. No, and nobody complained, so no adverse effect. No harm, no foul.
So, but if someone new was to move into town and say, I hate those Christmas lights.
The thing is, you're talking about something that doesn't even fall under this code.
Yeah.
Barking dog show.
I mean, that was, with that holiday event and those lights we put up, not.
We're talking
falling under
about
Any sort of special event.
temporary structures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, offsite, which are the utilities. The use is adequately served by sewer and septic and water and electricity as applicable. Utilities can be connected temporarily to such a service without placement of lines, wires, pipes, hoses, or similar temporary utility connection infrastructure across the sidewalk or similar designated pedestrian walkways. The use of an internal combustion engine, electric generators is not permitted.
I would like to understand what as applicable is on A really falls under. For instance, a temporary food truck is allowed to have tanks and things to hold their sewer for that temporary purpose. But as per the health department, which we discussed is different than what we're talking about now. But then I just want to avoid a situation where this food truck pulls up to be here for 2 days for, for whatever reason, and we're requiring them to hook up the sewer.
I don't think that's in the code as applicable.
No,
So,
that's what I'm just trying to make, because it says as applicable. So I'm trying to is that
so if he doesn't have holding tank,
they do, they're required. by-
Even to get more extreme, if somebody very literal was looking at the code and as applicable wasn't in there, and for whatever reason, they didn't want to approve somebody's temporary use, well, that information kiosk you're putting up, it's not going to be connected to sewer and electricity, so you can't have it there. Right, so that's why the as applicable is there.
So I guess my question is, if that food truck has the proper holding tanks and such, would it then be applicable to them?
It's only applicable to them if they're going to be somewhere long enough they have to dump. And then it doesn't say they have to be connected to the sewer. It says they have to be adequately served,
Yeah, I can understand
which is
that for sure.
different.
Meaning they can take off for an hour, go dump their stuff in a approved spot and come right back.
Right.
Okay.
okay, maintenance of walkways.
Can we go back up to the use of an internal combustion
Yeah.
engine?
Oh, the use of internal combustion engines, electric generators is not permitted.
I think that should say, the use of external, internal combustion engines, electrical generators not permitted.
So you think if somebody's using a gas powered generator, but it's inside their temporary building,
Will
they,
some of those, vehicles have that? How do they get their electricity?
well, it's still outside the vehicle.
No, they're probably built into the vehicle.
I had an RV with a generator built into it, but it was outside the vehicle, if you take my meaning.
Outside your living quarters, not outside the vehicle itself, because it's enclosed.
It was,
Generator.
And it's an internal combustion engine. Electric, it doesn't say internally in the
right.
vehicle or out of the vehicle.
It's basically saying gas or diesel generators are not allowed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
But it also
the
makes
instance
it-
that Osprey Point comes up, again, they have a big event field, lots of room to have potentially a generator going. And this would not allow that to happen. where just across the field, there's 200 RVs with generators running.
This isn't about a special event.
Yeah, this is not a special event.
Just temporary use.
This is temporary structures and uses. Yeah, okay.
It's gonna be a food truck or any other thing.
But your temporary structures and uses that are associated with a special event are part of the special event permit.
But then
This is for temporary uses outside of a special event.
The Osprey Point might choose to have food truck pulling over there that's not part of any special event.
Okay,
Have another great example, and they come to the event and they volunteer for the suicide walk every year. And they come to our event with their RV. And they come here to the parking lot once a month with their RV. They have no electrical hookups here, so they're running their generator to run their air conditioner, etc. in that temporary use thing with no event permit. And they run a generator.
Well, you're talking about a special event, right?
No,
no,
no, with no special event. They come every month to the parking lot, waterfall clinic
yeah, they do.
with their RV. And they have no electrical hookups there. They use their generator.
That happens actually quite a bit
Once a
at
month.
events where, or different times where a hospital has a mobile medical unit. During the COVID, and there were lots of little, testing stations placed at different places.
So
and they
are,
use the power.
are we talking about generators attached to vehicles?
It's talking about a generator. That's why we think it could be because the use of an internal combustion engine
But
generator.
we're saying that there's vehicles that have generators built in. Maybe they exhaust outside, but they've got generators that are built into
Maybe instead of restricting the generators as a whole, you restrict that the generator's not causing nuisance.
We do have quiet generators.
And they're not shooting the exhaust in their neighbors' windows. They're
Yeah,
not.
solar generators.
They're not.
But that's not an internal combustion engine.
Well. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of thinking we can split this. Because. If you have a generator. And you're in a cow field, who cares, right? If you're in the middle of downtown with a generator, everybody cares.
Not
Take the
necessarily.
waterfall clinic out of here.
Because-
Well,
Run
and then
it
for something
right
like
here.
waterfall clinic, that's another possibility.
In the year 2023, you can purchase generators, and the vast majority of generators are very quiet. And you might not hear it at all.
So now what about the gases?
That again,
Not-
I think it has to do with nuisance. If you can't have that in place where it impacts the neighbors in a terrible way.
But what about the waterfall? Clinic?
Again, if they're a nuisance, then we ask them to put the generator somewhere else.
How would you-
Anytime, right, there's just so many things, emergencies, there's so many things, the CERT people that we're working with a
Well,
lot that may
not about-
come to do stuff. They need a generator. I mean, but not allowing generators, I can see that in downtown Portland, where the fumes might be rising up all the high rises, but this. Generators are being run all over the city for various reasons and important reasons.
I have a generator connected to my house and power goes out, it automatically comes on.
You're not temporary use.
You're right. You got it.
Yeah, he was. That's why I'm. But, and then of course you run into power cords too. And I did, and I'm sorry, I didn't save the article. I did notice something in there about certain regulations in regards to generators. But, again, I was on one of my wormhole. Just starting to go down the rabbit hole on a whole bunch of different topics, so.
I mean, any of the courts are covered by the maintenance of walkways and the other things that we've been going through.
I think as long as we protect the community from nuisance generators,
How would
use the
you,
non-nuisance generators,
how would you enforce that?
or I would assume that the city already has some sort of standards in place for noise, bad gases, like we mentioned earlier, bright lights.
If I
and
could
things like
address that for you, there's no objective standard for odors or bad gases. And the noise nuisance ordinance as written is completely unenforceable because it requires that you measure above a certain decibel level using a particular make of decibel meter operated by a person who's had a specific type of training,
In our city.
both of which are unavailable. Yeah,
You probably don't even offer the training.
they don't offer the training
That
anymore.
probably falls into the category of many things that need updating.
Many things, yes.
I guess. I don't know, do we want to make a decision on this? Or do we want to gather more information? Once we have other things, we're gonna have to gather information on. I mean, I'm very concerned about, noise and safety. Those are my concerns about a gas generator. It's not a,
I'm on offsite impacts on the rate above,
right?
odors, vibration, flares.
So I'm gonna have to look at some generators, see if there's certain standards involved or something.
Well, it says as long as.
Yeah, if you don't get a complaint from a neighbor that the generator's too loud or too gassy.
Yeah, but neighbors telling on other neighbors,
I get it. We don't want to.
that's not a good scenario. I don't know, what do you guys think? On the generator then? I just,
I think that a lot of the mobile units need them.
Yeah,
I'm
I
concerned
mean,
about taking it away, but
Yeah.
I do understand the concerns about the noise.
so do we wanna work on finding a way that we can put restrictions on generators? Or do you guys just wanna decide on it?
Well, you could say that use of internal combustion engine. Combustion engine electrical generators are not permitted if causing a nuisance.
How about this? How about not permitting the use of generators if electricity is available at the site?
Got a thought on that as well.
Yeah,
During the holiday event, we had a nighttime event. All of the Christmas lights that we put up through the season were powered by the grid. But when we wanted to light up that row of vendors across the street, that backs more on the Ringo side of that area. The power that was available just didn't work. I don't know exactly why. We routed it from the Ringo's property over there. It just didn't work. Mid-event, volunteer goes, I got a quiet generator, a brand new Honda quiet generator. I'll go get it. We put it over there. We ran it and we had an event. No one ever even knew it was there.
Yeah,
But it's
they're
not-
much
It's a modern, quiet generator.
more quiet than the people at the event.
Oh, that was the-
well, I think if there's electricity available, generator shouldn't be. Because you already have the source that should be used.
It was available, but it wasn't.
But it didn't work. So we had to
That's
make a call
there for that
mid-event.
case.
That's that case, that's a special case.
Does
But
the generators have a decibel rating?
they do,
And, you could say, decibels over this or under that, that's,
We just discussed that we don't have any way as a city to measure that.
well, no, the generator themselves,
Oh, I know,
nowadays, the
it's what it-
manufacturers. have
Right.
a
yeah.
Placard or
decibel
whatever.
rating on them.
I think most of them actually do come with some sort of
It
They
do.
do,
measurable.
so,
Maybe we should say that as far as noisy or whatever. I mean, that's,
And then if there's a complaint, you can be addressed. You can show the person.
I
this is
think,
a quiet
I think we should go to the best option first, which is simply if there's electricity, you hook up the electricity. And then you can use a generator if there's no electricity available. And then maybe put some decibel restrictions on it or something like that. And it would be, the decibel restriction would be based on the manufacturer's rating. You know, like you said, we would want to make sure that it's a white generator. Sure.
I'm just thinking like, we don't have decibel limits on lawnmowers or blowers or chainsaws or yarders up in the hill. I think. we're
Well,
thinking like,
a lawnmower is a lot more infrequent than a food truck.
my neighbor.
At least that's what
for
the
hours
code,
and
you
hours.
know,
Well, you're talking about a temporary thing.
It's temporary.
I'm gonna go grass once a week.
we're talking about mobile food units.
Temporary.
Temporary.
That's not
Temporary.
temporary.
It's a temporary.
So you're
mobile
telling me the
temporary
food trucks aren't in the location for pretty much 24 hours a day? They can run that generator anytime they want?
Can they be open 24 hours? We have generators
can.
running 24 hours a day in Lakeside already, but
That's-
all over the place.
Well,
We're in a limited
but my
business.
point is we don't want to add to the problem, right?
I
We
tend
don't
to
want to add
agree.
to the
If power's
problem, especially
available-
when we can solve the problem. So if we do say if there's electricity available, to use electricity, and then simply go with the requirements of the generator has to meet certain standards. I mean, I think that's a reasonable
I think
Yeah,
that's fair.
sure.
compromise.
I mean, the vast majority of generators made in the last
Yeah,
10 years are gonna be of a much different
yeah,
standard.
but you should hear my generator.
You got old one?
Yeah, it's a propane one too. I guess it doesn't matter. All right. So that's the generator talk. Maintenance of walkways, the use on or adjacent to sidewalk or other designated pedestrian way shall be maintained at all times a minimum unobstructed pedestrian passageway area of 36 inches and avoid creating safety hazards for pedestrians and vehicles. I'm assuming we're all okay with that. It just makes sense.
Are all sidewalks in Lakeside at least 36 inches? I think they probably are.
Yeah. Basically saying, you know, it's a right of way. Okay, maintenance of, we did that one. Unattached signage. One sandwich board type sign may be placed on the right of way adjacent to the use, subject to the 36-inch pedestrian passage clearance indicated above. So,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, this is unattached,
Yeah.
but I'm seeing the signs of food trucks that are really cool. Carving, they're carved and stuff like that. Is that actually attached to the food trucks?
Not in our
Unattached,
local
unattached.
example.
The flags
But-
are unattached.
Because I don't want them to lose, but it's right up against the truck, right?
Well, you can have your truck here and out there, you can have your reader board so people can pass through. Yeah.
So here's a suggestion. Instead of an A-frame, to say a sign.
I like that because otherwise you're eliminating, and maybe this is your intention, but you're eliminating every other form of signage. You know what I mean? There are 100 kinds of signs in the world
Well, you can put
other than an
as many
A-frame.
signs on the truck as you want.
I understand, but I'm just saying, there are lots of different types of signs other than A-frames. And when you specifically lock it down to an A-frame.
So these wood carved signs that they have, because that actually is good for Lakeside and good for the food truck. See those. kind of
Same
things
thing
like
with the
that.
big flags that say open or whatever, you know what I mean? Because they attract visitors.
Well, I'm not talking about the flags, I'm talking about the wood carved signs, the nice looking signs.
Signage.
I'm back on the Corvallis because it was a newly adopted, temporary.
Right, but
ordinance.
remember, we looked at both Coos Bay, North Bend, Dayton. You know, we looked at quite a few of them.
Right, and I looked at those too, but I just brought this one for the signage because I liked it, because it made it less restrictive. Temporary signs may be no larger than 6 square feet. Must not obstruct pathways
Don't we already have a sign code?
Well,
It's a mess.
I know it's not used, but
Yes,
one of your goals this year is to revise it.
make it legal.
Make it, yeah.
So the 6 foot would cover, like if they do those flags at for a temporary use, you know, almost all of them have those, but it would be less than 6 square feet.
But
Because,
most of those are quite a bit longer than 6 square. 6 square feet is only 2 by 3 or 1 by
1
6.
by
A
6.
lot of those things are 10 feet tall, 18 inches wide situation. We have to decide how big we want to do.
I guess it'd be okay as long as you're not line of sight, you're hiding out, you know, you're blocking someone else's,
Yeah, not obstructing.
you know, like if you.
Visual.
you know, as far as signage goes, I think we should refer to our signage code and update it. But with the additional usage of a singular sign. So this actually gives you more than you would normally get. Because it is a temporary thing, you know, you don't see it every day. But I know our signage code is in need of a lot of work. I don't know, what do you guys think? Am I just kind of getting tired or
Well, all the
something?
festivals I've gone to and they have restrictions, they have their whole rows of trucks. And they have a sandwich board. And all their other stuff on the side, and it made it clean and
Yeah.
uniform, and it was just professional looking. Instead of having everybody having blows and all this stuff, and it just was distractive and not, it just wasn't the festivalish look to it.
Yeah, and that would be my concern, is that we should get carried away with it. But I mean, one sandwich board or one sign is not.
Well, you have a sandwich board, your truck is X amount of feet long, you have your side things here, people are walking, people are straight this way.
You're assuming that people are walking. Potentially that business is attracting people who are driving by.
Well, no, I'm talking about festivals and your events.
Again, but all temporary uses.
Well,
But
if I was up driving by on. So in other words, you think the nice little wind thing helps. attract
it's
them in?
much more effective than an A-train.
Well,
it's-
I wasn't
it's
thinking
all
about
over the
that as
place,
much as
too.
more as a truck place like that, it just allows in a festival more, you know, mode.
But, you know, you have those little banners everywhere, just kind of cheapens.
I'm not opposed.
But I
to
see what you're
restrictions
saying.
on
Yeah.
corner size.
Like the guy in the corner, he, you know, out there, that junction, that little A-frame sign's not gonna do nothing.
Yeah,
So when you have your wing guy and, which, you know, obviously, you really got, and I'm just either too old or whatever, but I can never read some of those things. You know, you just gotta assume that that thing there is,
a lot of that is just getting someone's attention. It's not, it could say anything. The idea is just to get them to look.
Exactly, and that's it, but if you have 10
distracted,
people getting your
right.
attention, then it just becomes noise. And trust me, I used to work in the automotive industry, and dealerships are notorious for just getting way out of hand with that garbage, but we always promoted it because we didn't care.
Like I said, I don't personally see a problem with setting size or quantity limits. You know what I mean? I think that 2 is fair, because you might want to put a directional sign
Well,
or, you know, up the block or something, and then one right where you're at. And then she mentioned 6 square feet. I think 10 square feet would probably cover almost all uses.
well, but I think if we revise our sign code and stick with the 1A frame, you come out ahead. Because you can still do what you'd normally be able to do with the signs
On top of the 1A frame?
on top of the 1A frame.
Yeah, because that's not really, is that proper?
I don't know why they're even addressing signs on here, except for the fact that they wanted to give people an opportunity to put a sandwich board out
Could
there.
probably overdo
I
it.
think the main intention was to keep unattached signage out of the walkways.
Exactly, and I think that's why they said, hey, we'll let you put this additional sign up. I mean, it's like for this code, it's giving you a benefit.
And this isn't actually talking about this is the signage you can have. This is talking about the signage you can have in the right of way.
So if that
Which is-
sign is out of the right of way and or attached to the cart. No problem.
Yeah, then it would revert to the actual sign code for the
Right,
zone.
Right, it's just, we're talking about a sandwich sign, so I shouldn't have even brought up the car thing. So, one attached sandwich sign,
Unattached.
unattached,
Yeah.
are we all good with that? Yeah. All right, good. Precedent of special event. Should the time and location of the approved temporary use or structure intersect with the time or location of an approved permitted special event, the use or the structure must vacate the area subject to the event permit unless separate approval has been granted by the event operator. In other words, special events take precedence. Which obviously.
I think those are in the benefit of our local public and should.
So alcohol. The sale and consumption of alcohol shall not be permitted at the location of temporary use or transient business. Says here also highlighted, except in instances where such has been specifically approved as an aspect of a special event permit application. Yeah, actually, I'm good with that.
I am too. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Because a special event, you know, if you have a beer truck
The
or whatever.
wine and tasting.
Yeah.
How did that, well, that was on permit when they had the wine tasting thing at day. That was
I'm
at
sorry,
the Lake Shore Lodge. They had a wine tasting.
but it was all in their
Yeah.
dining room under their own permit.
Yeah.
So number 16, sound amplification. No amplification of sound shall be permitted by a transient business. A music player is acceptable as long as the sound does not exceed beyond the immediate vicinity of the transient business and does not generate complaints from neighboring businesses, customers, or community members.
I mentioned this last time that I think that first sentence is redundant. I think from the second sentence on covers the need.
Right, and I still disagree with you.
I mean, all sound is amplified. Even your tiny little transistor radio got amplifier in there.
Well, we're talking about amplification and
That's what you're talking about. The permit doesn't specify with that. It says no amplified audio.
Right.
So as
so no
long as it.
amplified
a
audio.
music player is
Permit, a
acceptable, as long as it
music
doesn't
player
interfere
is
with the
acceptable. Right, so no amplified music except music player.
Well,
Like
music
I said, I
player,
don't
that's
disagree. I just
okay.
think it's redundant. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I think it should be in there. I like that. So we're good with that? All right, moving along, building codes. Structure complies with the applicable building codes. I'm sure everybody's fine with that. Let me know if you're not.
Are there any building codes that specifically apply to mobile stuff that wouldn't even apply, right?
No, but this code section is for other temporary structures
Yeah.
as well. So the
So, like,
idea
if
is
you're
you
putting
don't
up
want
a-
somebody to put up an actual building
Shed.
and then say, well, I don't have to follow the code because it's temporary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't go to Home Depot.
Right.
Duration of placement of temporary structure. Except where specified authorized by city administrator. Are we all good with that? The length of time that a temporary structure may remain on the site shall not exceed so many months or a total of so many months one calendar year. Isn't this redundant to the 45-day thing that we were talking about?
That was my question.
Because way back in the beginning,
So 45.
we were talking about the occupation of the location for more than 45 consecutive days
months.
constitutes a permanent location. So how is that different from?
This is a number of months.
the placement of a temporary structure. Well, I guess it's, if they're not running the business and they're just leaving the building there, but.
And did we give the city administrator the ability to extend that 45 days earlier? Or you're giving them that ability in this question?
Where's the 45 days we're talking about?
Oh, okay, so let's go back to the,
That was for a transient business.
that was, C1. Oh, so that was for a transient business. And
But
this
it's only-
is, okay, so this is just talking about
Temporary structure.
the land part and structure.
Shall remain on a site, shall not exceed X amount of consecutive months. Or X amount of months in any one calendar year. Okay.
So are we saying somebody can leave a structure and not be in business?
Yeah, because this is not just for temporary businesses. This is temporary buildings, trailers, kiosks, food units,
Oh,
and
so
other
that's a
structures.
Construction. trailer.
This is an actual structure.
Probably applies to that section. Where we talking about.
Yeah. So how does that apply when somebody is building a house?
Well, a house isn't a temporary structure.
Well, when they're building the house. and they're
Building my
building
house
a
temporary.
temporary structure. It doesn't-
What?
They built a little shed for them to work out of or
Yeah,
something like that. While they're building the house.
Well, yeah, that would be a temporary structure.
so that would fall underneath this category.
Yeah,
And before we've used the use of RVs for that. The 120 days.
well, that's for somebody to live in while their house is under construction.
Yeah,
And that's not a temporary structure.
And how long do you have?
that is not.
Is there a limit on how long you take to build your house? You know, if I hire a builder and he decides that he needs a little small shack to build, you know, to sit down and do whatever, and he's telling that you gotta finish that house in this period of time or move your office.
So, David. This is probably down your alley.
Okay.
Temporary structures when you're doing construction. How long do they typically sit there?
Sit there for a while, again. A building, you could take 2 years to build a building. Temporary structure, you have a contractor's shed, all there's drawings, paperwork, contracts. His office is there, 2 years. You're only allowing him there for 120 days.
No, time hasn't been set. That's what this item has as blanks is how long should they be allowed to stay?
Right.
And it allows the city to say, yeah, go ahead, you can stay longer.
Oh, and it does allow the city to say, yeah, that's right.
I mean, give them an expansion like it does in the RV code for like 120, 180 days, and if they're not done in 18 months, then they come back to the city and it's a no fee extension.
Request.
It's done. Here. It's total. In one calendar year.
Yeah, but it starts with except when specifically authorized.
Yeah.
So how often would you want that builder to come back to the city council and say? We would like, you know, our project, it has 3 more months, we would like to extend our stay. Is that every 6 months, every?
Yeah, just check in so it doesn't sit there.
Well, this would actually not codify how often somebody would have to come back.
If they wanted to stay longer, would they not have to come back and ask for an extension?
What this is saying is that whoever they designate as the decision maker for this can just say, yeah, you can stay for however long you think you need to stay. You don't have to come back every.
So at the beginning of the building process, they can say, we've got an 18-month project plan. we want to put this temporary building here for 18
Yeah.
months.
That's,
Okay.
that's exactly
Oh,
right.
so without a permit, they can stay for whatever we're filling in the other one.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So you're saying this is the default limit
Right.
unless you ask for more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how long does it take to remodel let's say a kitchen? Not a kitchen. How long does it take to remodel? Like a bedroom or something like that, to where you have to be. Okay. When we had our water damage, we were out of our house for 2 months. Of course, that was in an area where you can get contractors with that. You know. And that's probably what we're looking at here, is something like that possibly. I don't know, I would say, what, 6 months? One, in any one calendar year.
If you do 2 projects
Six.
on your property.
Yeah, 6 consecutive months. For a total of 6 months, one calendar year. You're thinking 6 and 6. Because remember, this is somebody who's saying, you know, I'm not gonna go to the city and get, you know, this approved, I'm gonna just put it up.
I feel like it could be even shorter, knowing that the city has the ability to extend it out as long as they planning the project.
Good with that.
3 and 6.
Yeah, my vote.
3 consecutive 6 per year. That's what you're saying?
Well,
I'm just asking, whatever you want.
3 consecutive months.
I would say 3 consecutive months. For a total of 6 months, you need 1 calendar year.
Good. Licensing, the applicant has obtained and will maintain all required licenses, permits, including Lakeside business license. And an or right-of-way use permit as applicable. Litter cleanup, the applicant for any temporary use shall keep the area within 25 feet of the temporary use clean and free of litter generated by the temporary use. And there's something here that I kind of washed out, and is disposed of
Litter in the
okay, disposed of in their own container receptacle, use of cities. Trash receptacles for trash for temporary use is prohibited. That's the same thing we talked about in special events.
Why does it need to be generated by temporary use? If you're in that area using it temporarily, and it's something you didn't put there, I feel like you should pick it up. The trash blows
I
across
think
their parking lot, and you're like, that ain't my trash, I'm gonna pick it up.
Right.
Keep your area clean, you're temporarily using.
Right, well, that's what it's saying, within 25 feet, they need to keep it clean.
Only if they created the trash, is what it says.
Yeah, that is what it says.
I like Adam's idea,
I mean,
make them do a little bit more.
if it's not filthy, it's filthy, it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
you need to clean it if you're gonna use it.
That's good.
Clear, free of litter, period, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Good. All right, visual appearance from the street. All items visible from the street shall be kept in good repair and be maintained in a safe and clean condition. Fire inspection, any temporary use involving flammable materials or fuels shall pass a fire inspection. And or the local fire department shall indicate that such an inspection is not required. So now in this case, that generator would have to pass inspection. Because it's using gasoline. And I guess unless it's attached to an RV, but then again, we will. So are we okay with allowing the fire department to indicate that it's not required?
I have some input on this that's
Uh-huh.
maybe different than what others have considered. I come from a background of a lot of glass blowers. And when those glass blowers in general go to a fire department and ask for approval, on most occasions, the fire department will say, we're not touching that. We're not making a decision one way or the other. Most fire departments don't want any part of that. You know what I mean? And then it falls back on what does the city code allow, you know what I mean?
Right, that's why we're allowing them to waive the inspection. So we're all covered on that.
Does that mean you would have to ask the fire department and the fire department says you are not answering?
Right.
Yeah.
And then take that answer back to the city and say, this is what they told me.
Okay. In Lakeside, if we wanted to, we have, for instance, had glass blowers at the holiday event, for instance, something like Christmas around.
And then at that point, the city administrator can go. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not gonna burn down the city type of thing, but that's up to them.
They make Christmas ornaments in them all.
So we are down to number 23. A transient business that occupies a single location for a permit in excess of blank consecutive days is considered to be permanent. Any transient business which becomes permanent must be permanently connected to the sewer, water, and power as applicable, illuminated with downcast shielded lighting when operating during hours of darkness, considered a new commercial development and subject to all the requirements for a new commercial development. So is this 45 days also? Because we kind of mentioned that
I
up
think so. I
above.
think the
If you want to be consistent,
Yeah,
then
Yeah.
so
it
45
has to
days.
be.
All right. Last but not least, commission should consider whether the decision of the city administrator in C is subject to appeal. If so, who would rule on the appeal and what would be the process? I think that's planning commission. Because we're talking about commercial development.
Yeah.
That's good with that?
Yeah.
What about city council? So you've already taken to the city council, you again stated you want less planning.
Yeah.
Well, but it's the type of thing. This is a development thing that really kind of falls underneath planning commission more so than.
I think that they appeal the planning because you're not the
We're not trying
legitimate
to.
body for the city, for being of the city council. You're
Well-
appointed and not elected.
Well, the whole thing about the planning commission is, it goes to the planning commission. If it wants to be appealed, it goes to the city council, it's the same.
But it refers to section C, and section C is much more broad than
Right.
development that you just mentioned.
Considered a commercial development and subject to all the requirements of the.
But that's
commercial
the very
development.
last part of section C. and you're disregarding-
Section C is all of the temporary building structures and uses. Yeah.
And he's saying that it's only.
Oh, it's not just 23C?
No, it's all of C. It's all of, so if somebody applies for a temporary use and the city administrator says no, or puts conditions on it they don't like, and they
Gotcha.
want to appeal that, who does
Okay.
it go to?
So that would go to. the- That's not, yeah, okay. All right, we got through that. We do still have some more decisions to be made. I know you probably took pretty good notes for Ron. I was good at the first and then we got a little lazy. What else we got going on here? Man? Oh, it's already 9 o'clock. So maybe we postpone the discussion on food courts for a later date. But you really should think about food court. You know, I think that would be a very good thing for Lakeside. I can think of a couple areas where they're really fitting good.
Yes.
So read the packet in regards to food courts, and we can talk about that next time with the final things we got right here to take care of. And we can be finished with it. All right. Any old business? None. Items not on the agenda, anybody wanna?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I know that in the discussion about city, I was approached, as from one of the commissioners to set in on meetings and be someone who could go in between the meetings and to the business association and be a liaison, yeah, without, of course, going into structures that we're not permitted to, but just to keep them up and encourage them, because that to me is one of the basics of our whole thing here is to encourage the local businesses and the people around there. So
If you'd like to do that, I'm fine with it. Are you guys okay with it? So you're our official liaison. Bingo. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I just wanted to run it through y'all.
Yeah, exactly. So, you can be officially recognized as a person from the planning commission. Otherwise, you wouldn't be officially recognized.
I know, I don't want to.
Yeah, we just, as a business association, we thought it would be nice, just like we have with the city council, to have one key member who, if we have a business owner come to me and ask me a question, I can say, hey, Randy, what do you think about this? Where do we stand on this? And he might say, well, let me talk to the other commissioners.
Yeah.
Or he might say,
Oh, yeah.
on page 42, it
Well,
says this.
and
exactly what-
Randy knows what's acceptable to say and what's not. Essentially, if Randy tells you something, it still has to go through the planning commission. But he's very knowledgeable in all things planning commission. You've been around probably the longest of any of us.
Yeah.
Well,
Market here.
I was off and on, so.
Randy's fish pallet right there, where Axe Stickers used to be.
Oh, boy.
I see it. I grew up with it in
Yeah.
Stockton, so.
So I'm gonna close the planning commission meeting. Oh, when is our next meeting? We should have it, workshop time, July 2, 3.
It is the first Thursday in July,
We don't do third Thursdays anymore.
July 6th. The city council needs the chamber in 2 weeks.
Oh, those bums.
Yeah.
Bounced us.
They bounced us.
Okay, that's fine. So.
So
it will be
July,
6th, Linnell saying.
July 6th. Okay. So we'll continue on with what we've got going.
thank you all for this information.
I really think that we can finish this off next time around.
I very much appreciate you guys allowing us all to participate in this process. I think
Well,
it's very.
I think it's good to have everybody involved because everybody is
One
important.
thing you have to remember, the planning commission is a citizens.
And thanks to Rob for all his hard work and researching all of it.
Oh my God,
It's gotta be
every time I
my
see
job.
Rob,
Look at the county and see jobs, you're like, okay, well, there's that.
Thank you, Rob.
Appreciate you guys.
Welcome.
It's adult-minded people rely a lot on Rob.
I always like seeing Carl.
Like the entire community.
So did you close the
Look
meeting?
to.
Did you close our meeting? Yeah, I think it did, didn't it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay.
No, I thought I closed it at 9:10.
Well,
right.
beforehand, we'll see Father's Day weekend at the event, right? Y'all gonna come have some fun at experience.
Oh, yeah.
And then vendors on